Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto uses Forbidden Scroll to change the future. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Uzumaki Naruto stood solemnly atop what had once been the Hokage monument, staring mournfully at the ruins of Konohagakure. The blonde shinobi sighed heavily. His home, destroyed, and there wasn't a damn thing he could have done to save it. None of the Fuinjutsu that could have done anything were simple enough to be used in time. His Senjutsu barely scratched his enemies, and even when he managed to injure them, they regenerated instantly. It was so unfair. But, at least he wasn't alone. That would have made this tragedy so much worse. At least there was another with whom he could share his pain. He looked to the horizon. It was sunset, and the vivid, vivacious oranges and pinks that had once faded gently through violets and periwinkles to indigo and navy sprinkled with stars were now marred with gray slashes of fire smoke and hazy dust clouds from the devastation below. The scenery was ruinous and beautiful all at once, like Kami-sama had taken his masterpiece and in a fit of rage scarred it with the colors of death and destruction, leaving only the most durable, battle-worn bits of life's vibrant hues to grieve the loss of the rest. Naruto shook his head as if to shake his thoughts from his mind before turning to address his companion. "We have one more chance, Sakura. We have one more chance to make sure this doesn't happen again. Itachi and Sasuke, Gaara and Temari, Tsunade, so many people could have been saved to Bayo. We didn't know." He heaved a breath, and his body shook with emotion. "We didn't know." Naruto was on the verge of tears. It had been years since the last time he cried. Probably when he found out that Jiraiya died. He hadn't even cried when Kakashi, he choked. He once again tried to shake the thoughts from his head. The action reminded him of Akamaru as No. He couldn't allow himself to go there. He spoke again. "They're all counting on us. Itachi, he gave us this chance to make sure that the world survives. We're gonna make changes, we're gonna stop this from becoming the truth, right?" He pleaded, "Right, Sakura?" "We'll save them all," she said, pulling Naruto into a hug. "They gave their lives to give us this chance, and we'll pull through. We gave them our word after all. And you don't go back on your word." She had to be the strong one now, for him, as he had been for her when she had been overwhelmed by her loss. Because at this moment he couldn't bring himself to hold back his tears anymore. They spilled one by one down his cheeks, over the whisker-like birthmarks that signified his burden, as he buried his face in her neck. "Thank you, Sakura," Naruto mumbled into her shoulder many minutes later, before he pulled himself away. He didn't bother wiping the tear trails that streaked his dirt-brown face. The only one who would see was Sakura, and after all they'd been through together, a tear-stained face was the least of his worries. Pulling himself together, Naruto delved into his mindscape, searching out this vulpine tenant. "Are you ready for this, Kurama?" The fox demon grinned, "Just as ready as you are. We have just enough chakra between the three of us to go back to several months before your genin exams. That is where we will start making changes. When you resurface, we will begin." Naruto left his mindscape. "Let's do this, Sakura." And with that the two shinobi and one bijou began to gather chakra as Naruto and Sakura started a long sequence of hand seals and synchronization. On the last hand seal the three cried together, "Jikuken Jutsu, Kinfuin, Toki wa Jyakyuten Surin no Jutsu." "Kit, hey Kit! Wake up! You brainless, yellow-furred flesh sack!" Naruto bolted upright, finding that he was sitting in his old rundown apartment with his toad-shaped alarm clock blaring the early hour. Naruto yawned. "Good morning to you too, Kurama," the blonde replied cheerfully. Yeah, Kurama chuffed, happy that Naruto was finally awake. They'd been back for nearly 15 hours now and Kurama had been afraid that something had glitched in the jutsu, but now that the boy was awake Kurama could happily pass out due to chakra exhaustion. "Gonna sleep for a while, Naruto. Time travel is exhausting, even for a sentient mass of chakra like me." "Go for it, Kurama," Naruto replied, noticing that the clothes he was wearing were tearing at the seams. As the blue-eyed shinobi was about to get out of bed to rip his clothes the rest of the way off, a black cloak shape flew through his open window, slammed it, then followed by placing a privacy jutsu around the entirety of the small flat. The cloaked character finally calmed down and pulled off the hood. Pink hair was revealed as Sakura slumped to the ground. "Naruto, you idiot! Why didn't you warn me I was going to still be 20 when we came back? I had to sneak into my mom's closet to find clothes that fit, and I had to tear my way out of my pajamas. They were my favorite ones when I was 12. How am I supposed to explain that to my mom later? Speaking of my mom, had my parents seen me before I managed to get out of the house, do you know how awkward that would be? And furthermore, I had to make it halfway across town, unseen. There are more A and BU out there now than we even had total by the time we could sense them. Please tell me you can do something about this." Sakura, breathe, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. She took a deep breath, held it for a few seconds and let it out slowly. Now that she was calmer, he continued, did you think that maybe you could use a henge? I thought so. And I thought I was supposed to be the smart one. Well, thanks, he bit out sarcastically. As much as he loved her like a sister, it got old listening to people underestimate his intelligence. Sure, he wasn't necessarily book smart, but he had his uses too. My original question still needs an answer, Naruto. Can you do something semi-permanent about this? I don't have enough chakra to hold a henge 24/7. Naruto looked at his female companion and rolled his eyes. Sakura, is that a serious question? I became a seal master for a reason, you know. Lucky for you, I know Tsunade Bachan's permanent henge seal. It took me nearly a month to decode it, but I know it. You know, it would take most competent sealers almost 3 years to do what you managed to do in 3 weeks. Don't grumble, Sakura replied, finally starting to relax. Naruto stood and began to rip his clothes the rest of the way off as he moved toward his dresser. He dug around in the drawers for a few minutes, trying to find something that would fit his 20-year-old body. He pulled out a pair of ripped ANBU-style pants of unknown origin that looked like they might fit. He removed the remains of the boxers he woke up in and pulled on the tattered pants. They were a little snug around the waist, but they would do until he finished Sakura's seal work and set some Kage Bunshin on his own. He turned around to dig under the bed for where he hid his childhood calligraphy set. He'd never used it until he began learning Fuinjutsu in his mid-teens with Jiraiya. The brush would be student grade, but in the hands of a master like himself, that wouldn't matter. Pulling his smallest brush from the fudmaki, he grabbed his inkstone and ink stick and checked that he still had water in the glass on his bedside table. Dripping some water from the cup into the well of his inkstone, he began to grind ink for the seal, slowly infusing it with his chakra as the solid stick of resin and pine soot sluggishly dissolved into the water. Grinding ink was an unhurried process. To pass the time, he questioned Sakura. Where do you want the seal to go, and what do you want it to look like? Sakura just looked at him as if he had grown another head. The blonde nin sighed as he continued to grind the ink. That diamond-shaped infuin on Bachan's forehead didn't just enable her Sosa Seze, Sakura. It was also tied to her permanent henge. I had to disentangle the seals on her henge from her Sosa Seze when the latter became too dangerous for her to use. Why else do you think her henge collapsed every time she used Creation Rebirth? Naruto explained. Now, where do you want the seal and what do you want it to look like? He tested the opacity and chakra density in the ink. Perfect. Sakura contemplated for a moment, then nodded to herself. Since it will show after the henge is applied, I want the seal here, and I want it to look like Shirsho's. She pulled her hair to the side and pointed at the nape of her neck. Naruto nodded, then began to trace the seals with a steady hand that came from years of practice. While trying to ignore ticklish feeling of brush bristles sweeping across the expanse of her nape, Sakura began to contemplate their travel. Naruto? Why are we still 20? I mean, the jutsu name is literally technique to reverse time, so why didn't we reverse back to our original states in this time? Naruto huffed, keeping 90% of his concentration on the complicated seal he was laying out. The reason for that, Sakura, is because the jutsu is half ninjutsu, half Fuinjutsu channeled through our bodies and the implanted Manjikyu Sharingan that Itachi stuffed down my throat. If we had also de-aged with the world around us, we would have been unable to keep up the necessary chakra flow to continue changing the flow of the time/space continuum to bring us back. If it were just you and me, we may have been able to go back a few months and it wouldn't matter anyway. It's unprecedented to travel back this far, and the only reason we could, and with so few drawbacks, is because I have a good relationship with Kurama and he supplied the lions, or rather, foxes, he grinned cheekily, share of the chakra necessary. As it is, you alone may have been able to go back maybe a week or two if you had all the prerequisites, such as a Manjikyu Sharingan, advanced sealing knowledge and so on, so it wouldn't really be worth going back by yourself anyhow. By myself I could probably travel back a couple months again, not really worth it. Also, if we had reverted back to our previous states in this time period, our memories and powers would have been locked away like everyone else's. Our bodies wouldn't have been able to take the strain of our current chakra levels and our brains wouldn't have been properly developed enough to handle the strain of so many more memories than they were built for at this point in time. The jutsu would have fallen apart, and we wouldn't have remembered what we were doing or what for. Our plans would have pretty much been for nothing. It is possible, however, to get other people in on our plan. Adults at least, like Ero-Sennin and Kakashi-sensei, or even Hokage-Jiji. Because the memory suppression was triggered with the reversal through Kurama's chakra, Sharingan and Fuinjutsu, it is possible with the combination of those three to unlock the memories. Naruto finished explaining just as he completed Sakura's infuin, henge. There, done. I need some of your blood. The pink-haired woman bit her thumb and allowed a few drops to fall on Naruto's outheld brush, afterward healing the small wound with her green healing chakra. He thanked her and swept her blood across the seal in a spiral pattern. He then pressed his hand over the seal and filled it with chakra. As he did so, the lines of the seal wiggled from Sakura's back, shoulders, and collar bones to collect under his palm. When the seal flashed with blue chakra to indicate its completion, he pulled his hand away to reveal the diamond shape of the finished seal. As Naruto made a Kage Bunshin to do his seal, which he had decided to conceal with an image of Kurama lying in a relaxed position with his tails waving behind him idly, staring out lazily with one red slit eye, chakra and henge are amazing things, turning away from Sakura, as he was placing it across his hip bone. The green-eyed medic contemplated Naruto's explanation and the idea of returning memories to trustworthy adults. Well, inner Sakura sounded, we'll discuss all the ramifications when Naruto's done with his seal. I think we should bring in Jiraiya-sama and Hokage-sama. They have the ability to do things, Hokage-sama in the village and Jiraiya-sama outside the village, Sakura said quietly, as Naruto finalized his seal behind her. Okay, that makes sense. It'll take me a day or two to formulate the seal to unlock their memories. Jiraiya won't even be in the village until Chunin exam time. I'd also really like to unlock Kakashi's memories. I don't think that's a good idea, Naruto. Naruto gritted his teeth and growled, upset. Yes, I know you two were together, she trailed off at his irritated hiss. But at this point it could just cause unnecessary problems for the team dynamic. You know how Kakashi is. Naruto sighed heavily in resignation. I know, Tobeo. Kakashi had a really hard time forgiving Sasuke, even when he came back to fight with us against Madara, and Kakashi had already. He stopped and took a deep breath, almost choking on the air. He was already gone before Sasuke really redeemed himself. I understand. Kakashi wouldn't be able to look at Sasuke like we do, okay, just Jiraiya and Hokage Gigi. Sakura nodded thoughtfully, leaning against Naruto's back. Naruto, we need to activate the henge now. It's been almost 3 hours since I got here and I think your ANBU watchers are getting antsy. The privacy jutsu's been up too long. I think they think you're getting attacked or abducted or something. The blue-eyed shinobi responded quickly, okay, the way you activate the infused is really easy. Use the standard hand seals for the henge, but rather than channel chakra to your hands, channel it to your seal. The seal has an infused voice altering array, so you'll sound like you did when you were 12, so will I. He activated his henge. I hate this. He yelped, unused to the sound of his 12-year-old voice. I was such a squeaky little shit when I was 12, Databeo. There was a tense silence for about 20 seconds before both time travelers burst into unrestrained laughter. Sakura wiped hysterical tears from her eyes. I thought you had gotten rid of that verbal tic of yours, she stuttered through her giggles. Naruto snickered back. The thing is hereditary. I can't get rid of it that easily. It comes back when I'm surprised, shocked, or really excited. Sakura stopped giggling in her surprise. Hereditary? You never told me you knew about your parents. Yeah, Naruto sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Just a second, Sakura. We should get dressed first, these clothes don't fit anymore. Naruto got up, holding the pants around his waist as he stumbled a bit, not used to this size. He'd have to retrain his taijutsu and hand signs so he could use them fluently at both ages. Walking gingerly to his closet, he grabbed some boxers and one of his usual jumpsuits, and an old t-shirt and pair of shorts that would probably fit Sakura. After tossing the clothes to Sakura and shrugging into his own, Naruto ran through a string of hand seals to alter the privacy jutsu, letting his ANBU watchers see into his apartment, but still blocking the sound. He sat back down. Where should I start? Your parents? Sakura suggested. My parents, huh? Naruto started. Well, on October 10th, 12 years ago, now, I was born to Uzumaki Kushina, heiress of Yuzuno Kuni, formerly of Yuzushiogakure, Konoha no Akai Chishio no Habanero, and her husband Namikaze Minato, Konoha no Kiroi Senku, the Yandame Hokage. Sakura gasped and looked over her shoulder at Naruto in shock. I thought you might be related to the Yandame, because of the resemblance between you and the picture in the Hokage's office. But to think you're his son, unfortunately I've never heard of your mom. You weren't there for the whole father-son reveal on the battlefield, were you? You were in the medical tent. I thought you knew though. Naruto replied before shrugging it off. Well, most of my mom's friends are either dead or too dense to figure out the relation. I have her eye and face shape, but my father's build and coloring. So. I've also never heard of Yuzushiogakure or Yuzuno Kuni. About that, Naruto ran his hand along the back of his head sheepishly. It's because the village elders didn't want me to put together where my family is from in defect. Not that there's a village to defect to anymore. During the years I was in the academy, the council took out everything relating to the Uzumaki and Yuzushiogakure out of the curriculum. Let's see if I can remember everything, he said, looking at the ceiling, and letting some of his weight rest against Sakura. before going into lecture mode. The Uzumaki were known for their red hair, large chakra reserves and vitality, their kenjutsu, and their use of fuinjutsu in battle. Uzushio was nicknamed the Village of Longevity, as the Uzumaki tended to live well into their hundreds. The Uzumaki and Uzushio were allies of Konoha, and helped fund its construction although they weren't included in the founding families. They were also distant cousins of the Senju. During the Dainiji Nikai Taisen, Kiri and Iwa came to a short-term alliance to wipe Uzushio off the map, due to the possibility that they would back up Konoha. It took 3 days for Iwa and Kiri to get through the whirlpools and security seals that surrounded the island and another week to overpower the ninja forces of Uzushio, even though they had the Yuzu forces outnumbered 7-1. Although Konoha got their distress call and request for backup, our forces didn't get there in time, and all that was left was destruction and ruins. As a symbol of remembrance to the friends of Konoha that we were unable to save, the Uzumaki clan swirl is emblazoned on the backs of all the Konoha standard issue Chunin and Jounin flak jackets, and the standard issue Konoha ninja uniform. Naruto continued as if reciting from a textbook as he indicated the swirl on his jumpsuit. As for Uzumaki and Konoha, Uzumaki Mito was the wife of the Shodame Hokage and the second daughter of the Uzumaki clan head, who was the leader of Uzushio. She was also the first Jinchuriki of the Kyubi no Kitsune Kurama. She sealed him into her own body during the battle between Senju Hashirama and Uchiha Madara at the Valley of the End, to take him out of the battle. She was Tsunade Bachan's grandmother, and my mom's great-aunt. When she was getting too old to restrain the Kyubi, my mother came to Konoha from Uzushio, to become the next Jinchuriki. Because the Uzumaki have special chakra and large reserves, we are the only ones able to hold back Kurama's malevolent chakra. So, she became the second Jinchuriki of Kurama. As Konoha's Akai Chishio no Habanero, my mom was feared for her kenjutsu, fuinjutsu and quick temper, as well as her work on the battlefront with Kyumo during the Daisanji Nikai Taisen. Oh yeah! She also had a verbal tick like mine, Databane, he chuckled. That's about it for Uzumaki history so, yeah, Naruto finished, looking at Sakura's flabbergasted expression. Wow, I don't know what to say, other than I guess it's fitting that Konoha's orange Hokage is the progeny of the red hot-blooded habanero, and the yellow flash. I thought so too, but you know, my ramen addiction is hereditary too. Sakura looked at him skeptically. Yeah. My dad was totally addicted to ramen, the only thing he liked better than ramen was my mom's cooking. You can ask Kakashi. He was on the Genin team under my dad. I'm pretty sure he made ramen runs for him. Or you could ask Erosenin, I mean they named me after ramen. Although the kanji translates to maelstrom, the name came from Erosenin's first book, The Tale of the Gutsy Ninja, where the main character was named Naruto, and he got the name from the Naruto floating in his ramen. Sakura sighed, her friend's family was so messed up. So, back to more serious topics, she said, what do you want to do about Sasuke? I mean, Itachi's already massacred his family, and he's already a broody asshole, and I'm supposedly still a love-struck fangirl. I can't change my tune overnight, or over the weekend as it may be. Good question. Damn, I wish it was possible to unlock Shikamaru's memories. He'd definitely be able to help us strategize. As it is, though, it's not safe to unlock people's memories until they're 15. At that point they're building new synapses, so it's possible for them to regain memories without undue problems. Naruto scrubbed his fingers through his messy spikes of hair in frustration. I don't know, let's wait until we talk to Hokage Gigi. He might be able to help us. Sakura was unimpressed, but she couldn't expect Naruto to have all the answers. As it was, she didn't have any ideas either. She huffed, annoyed. Fine, we'll go see Hokage-sama tomorrow. I'll see you later, Naruto, she said as she got up. She grabbed her cloak and gave Naruto a friendly hug before walking out the door. Sarutobi Hiruzen, Sandaime Hokage, was wondering what the fuck was going on when 2 Pre-Genin came in through his window. He was even more stumped when those same 2 Pre-Genin put up Jounin-level privacy jutsu and began scouring his office. He was a mix of enraged and outright shocked when they found 5 separate listening seals, set for aflame, and subtly adjusted the other to be chakra activated and deactivated. When his visitors sat themselves on the floor in front of his desk and lifted their hands above their heads in the universal gesture of surrender, the aged Hokage gave them a scrutinizing stare and after a few moments of careful consideration made a few subtle hand signs that calmed his almost palpably panicking ANBU guards, and sent them out of the room. The Sandaime was silent, contemplating how to start whatever conversation he was sure would come. Naruto and Sakura exchanged glances, their hands still held above their heads, subtly sweating in the oppressive atmosphere. Ano, Hokage Gigi? The blonde started unsurely. The Sandaime sighed, shook his head and looked at his unexpected guests. Naruto, just what is going on here? He said seriously, how did you know those seals were there? And how do you know that privacy jutsu? Naruto and Sakura slowly lowered their hands. Just a second, Gigi-sama, the blonde said, and nodded at his pink-haired companion, who with an almost invisible flick of her wrist, sent 3 Senbon into the corner of the office. The Hokage was surprised at the audible thump of a body hitting the floor. Sakura stood and hauled the body of the Nainbyu from the corner of the room before the desk of the Hokage. She removed the Senbon from his neck, and put him in stasis, so he would stay unconscious through their discussion. Sarutobi narrowed his eyes at the display of skill. Okay, what is going on? Where are my pregenin and who are you? The old man hissed through clenched teeth, as he began to stand and gather his chakra to attack. It really is me. I promise, Gigi-sama. Naruto lifted his shirt and channeled chakra to the Shiki Fujin. The seal stood out stark black on his tan skin. Even the Yondaime can't fake a Shiki Fujin, and even if it was possible, I know I'm the only Jinchuriki with a Shiki Fujin under the double Shirsho Fuin that denotes the Uzumaki Hack Fuin Shiki. The Sandaime's eyes were wide as he slumped back into his seat, wondering when Naruto learned all of that, because this had to be Naruto, as what he said was the truth. Naruto, you dumbass! Sakura hissed, smacking the back of his head, maybe just a little harder than necessary. Sandaime-sama, if you'll wait a moment we will explain, the pink-haired girl said soothingly. Then she shoved her elbow in Naruto's ribs, which were exposed due to Naruto cradling the painful lump on his head, somehow cluing him into her plan, as well as adding another injury to be nursed later. The Hokage stiffened as he saw the two going through hand seals, but relaxed when he realized the hand seals were for the standard henge. Wondering where his guests were going with this, he continued to watch curiously. A simultaneous mutter of Infuin, Kai, startled the elderly man. He knew that even an Infuin couldn't change the appearance and placement of such a strong seal as the Shiki Fujin. So, Naruto, even under henge that made him look like Naruto, was still Naruto. Sakura, on the other hand, didn't really have any distinguishing features that would show through a henge. He let out a gasp when he looked at the occupants of his office. One was obviously Naruto, just older, taller, and more developed. He still had whisker marks, and he still had his mother's facial structure, otherwise the aging leader could have mistaken Naruto for his father, albeit his father with longer hair. A person who didn't know Naruto would mistake him for the Yondaime at first glance, and maybe even a second or third. The other person in his office was a lean young woman with pink hair, like the Sakura he knew, green eyes, again like the Sakura he was acquainted with, and the same facial structure as the young Sakura. She had matured well, with a decent but not obscene figure and strong lean muscles. He came to the conclusion that there must be a very good explanation for having the older versions of 2 of his academy students sitting in his office, or this whole thing was an elaborate hoax that he could not even begin to comprehend. He sighed, pulled a bottle of sake out of a secret compartment in his desk and leaned forward with his elbows resting on the old oak desk, his hands folded under his chin. Explain, he stated, voice heavy with the weight of leadership. We're from the future, the 2 younger Nin said in unison. The Hokage sweat dropped. That's a great joke, but doesn't explain anything. What's really going on? Naruto sighed. I guess we're going to have to do this the hard way. I hate doing things the hard way. He whined. Just do it, Sakura snapped, getting irritated. In all of a second and a half Naruto stood, a Manjikyu Sharingan spinning in his left eye, pulled a seal out of one of his pockets, slapped it on the Sandaime's forehead, and channeled some of the Kurama's purified chakra that made up the yellow bijou cloak into said seal. Sarutobi fell unconscious onto his desk, seal tag slipping from his forehead onto the floor. You didn't accidentally kill him, did you? Sakura asked, seemingly nonchalant. You wound me, Sakura-chan. Naruto exposed hysterically, placing a hand over his heart. Don't you trust in my amazing sealing prowess, and godly shinobi powers? Sakura giggled at his dramatics. No, seriously though, I didn't kill him. He should return to consciousness right about now. Then Sarutobi sat up straight, his eyes were wide and he was gasping as if he'd woken from a nightmare. As his breathing calmed, he pondered. Okay, that explains a few things. It still doesn't explain why I have memories of a future that hasn't happened yet, and why the 2 of you look 8 or 9 years older than you're supposed to be. Naruto rubbed the back of his head in a mix of frustration and soothing the still throbbing lump Sakura had gifted him. Well, the Chunin exam you just got memories of was the start of everything, and in the end we were practically the only 2 Konohanin left alive. I managed to become Rokudain just in time to watch the village burn. We had no choice. Naruto sighed, rubbing his hands over his face as if to scrub the bad memories off of his skin. Over the next 2 hours Naruto and Sakura took turns explaining what had happened. Everything from Sasuke's defection and Naruto's training trip to Pain's invasion and his identity to Obito, and what happened to him on and on, including Sasuke's return to sanity and subsequent death at the hands of Obito, finally ending with their rewinding of time. So, that's the way it is, Naruto concluded. Namikaze Uzumaki Naruto, Genin, Rokudame Hokage and former Supreme Commander of the Allied Shinobi Forces reporting for duty Hokage GG, Naruto saluted. Following suit Sakura said, Haruno Sakura, ANBU Captain Kuma, head medic and advisor to the Rokudame Hokage reporting for duty, Sandame-sama, also finishing with a salute. Sarutobi sighed for what felt like the 1000th time in the last few hours. Okay, you two, I'm going to give you a metaphorical blank check to do what you feel needs to be done, including but not limited to disposing of Orochimaru and his spies ahead of time, so long as you keep me informed. I'll try to get Jiraiya here sooner than the Chunin exam, and I expect you two to straighten out the Sasuke and Kakashi situation that will happen when you are assigned teams. That means making sure that Kakashi isn't playing favorites, like I suspect he did the first time. I will rein in the council and get someone to deal with Danzu. I will also try to see if I can do anything about Itachi. Anything else? Ano, Sandame-sama, do you have any idea how I can drop my fangirling without seeming suspicious? That kind of thing doesn't really change overnight. I'm also not nearly as good an actor as Naruto, and he'll be slowly dropping his dope act over the next few months. How about I convince Kurinai say she gave you a long talk about kunoichi conduct which included some seriously gruesome genjutsu after your next kunoichi lesson in the academy, which is on Tuesday, and that can be your cover. You'll have to deal with it during the day for a couple more days, but that should be good enough, Sarutobi answered with a distant expression. Naruto nodded in agreement, and Sakura felt a lot better. After telling the two that he'd deal with the Anbu still in stasis on the floor, the three shinobi said their goodbyes for the day. Thank you, Sarutobi-sama, she said. Thanks, Jiji-sama, we'll see you later. Make sure to tell Erosenin to hurry his pervy ass back, and remind Kakashi not to be so late. The two younger shinobi reapplied their Infuin, Henge and released the privacy jutsu, allowing the Hokage's ANBU guards back into the office. Finally finished with everything, the two waved and left out the open window. The Sandame whimpered and dropped his head on the table, hard. Why can't anyone use the door? Naruto and Sakura hopped from the Hokage tower down to street level and ambled leisurely down the dirt roads toward Ichiraku Ramen, talking about inconsequential things such as the academy and Irika. The two suddenly felt a presence behind them. Turning quickly, they saw Uchiha Sasuke in a small alley staring straight at them. What would he want from them? He was supposed to be a broody little loner right now. Using ANBU sign language that he definitely shouldn't know, as it hadn't yet been invented, he indicated they should follow him into the alley. Naruto quickly sending a low-level pulse of Kurama's purified chakra towards Sasuke in a technique not dissimilar to echolocation to confirm his chakra signature, followed the Uchiha and motioned for Sakura to join him. Walking into the alley, the blonde was suddenly pushed up against the brick wall by a pair of fists at the collar of his jumpsuit. Figuring it was Sasuke, he looked down, confirming his thought, and motioned to Sakura to remove the kunai from Sasuke's throat. Naruto raised a blonde eyebrow at the raven-haired boy, which seemed to provoke even more anger, but gave Sasuke the indication he needed to at least state his problem, which he did, if a little, or a lot, more violently than necessary. Naruto. What the fuck? He emphasized his question with another little shove into the brickwork. I woke up yesterday morning in my normal 12-year-old body with an extra 8 years' worth of memories. Memories in which I died. Another shove, and with these memories came certain ingrained habits I certainly haven't picked up before now, as well as a doubly evolved Sharingan I certainly haven't killed anyone for. And according to these memories and my new eyes, the Manjikyu Sharingan spun in his eyes, you're the only one who would even be capable of pulling together the resources to resort to something that would cause this kind of abnormality. And your chakra signature is way too big for this time period. Another shove, I repeat, what in the name of flying fuckery is going on? Sasuke hissed between his teeth, his Sharingan on glare, and the Uchiha stared down at full force. During Sasuke's little tirade, Naruto began to grin, and his grin kept growing in size and viciousness with each little shove into the brickwork. At the end of the Uchiha's rant, Naruto was grinning like someone had just made him Hokage, then told him that ramen was now the national food of Fire Country and it was law that it be served 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, and his eyes were sparkling like fireworks during a summer festival. Sasuke, you can let me down to bail. Sakura, you can take down the privacy jutsu. We'll go to my place and explain. Sasuke grudgingly lowered Naruto to the ground, and stepped back, allowing the blue-eyed boy room to move. Naruto started walking out of the alley, then turned back to Sasuke, still grinning full force. And you can be a bit more discreet next time. Not that there should be a next time, mind you. You could have just come to my place. There was no need to corner me in an alley. You have your memories and know as well as I do that that kind of back alley bullshit makes you look like an untrained highway bandit, not an experienced ninja. Not that we're supposed to have experience yet, but really, Sasuke. Naruto waved a hand in the air nonchalantly, You're an Uchiha, the blonde drawled, his grin turning sly as the blatant sarcasm in Naruto's voice caused Sakura to snicker quietly. Sasuke turned his face away and flushed pink, pouting, then glared at Naruto as if he was neither blushing nor pouting. Sakura saw it all and snickered more, getting louder when Sasuke turned his glare on her. After the trio reached Naruto's apartment, he offered refreshments and proceeded to make the group comfortable around the banged and dented coffee table in the small living room area in his even smaller apartment. Offering a tomato and some onigiri to Sasuke to calm his pending ire, the blonde quickly got the small meeting underway, explaining the reason for Sasuke's extra memories and explaining a few more things Sasuke had questions about regarding specific instances in his new memories. Finally, the raven-haired boy asked the question that both Sakura and Naruto were waiting for. So, why is it that my memories came with me when you did the time reversal and weren't sealed like everyone else's? Naruto grinned widely, showing off his larger-than-average eye teeth. He'd been contemplating that exact issue since Sasuke had found them earlier, and he thought he had an answer. That, he paused dramatically, is Itachi-san's fault. Sasuke's face crumpled in dissatisfaction. It's Itachi's fault. Of course it's Itachi's fault. Everything is because of Itachi. Fucking perfect Itachi. The mumbling continued in such a vein for a few minutes before Naruto and Sakura's emotional training failed to help them conceal their hysterical laughter any further, and the two nearly busted a lung each. Hee hee ha 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 ha. Naruto gripped at his stomach as the laughter caused his muscles to ache. Finally calming down, the blonde decided to expand on his previous statement. Well, hee hee, the reason you have your memories seems to come down to the fact that when we initiated the jutsu, your eyes were originally Itachi-san's database. The eye he gave me was Shursui-san's, but as he'd been keeping it in an extra-dimensional configuration made by his own Sharingan, it eventually became saturated with his chakra, and because the Sharingan he gave me was an integral part of the success of the Jukuken jutsu used to travel here, your Sharingan, which, though originally your own, are also saturated with Itachi-san's chakra, caused a slight glitch in the jutsu pertaining to only you. Sasuke was staring at Naruto as if he'd grown another head. That's my theory anyway. The dobe actually grew a brain, Sasuke said in wonder, still staring at Naruto. Oh, it shouldn't be that surprising to Bayo. You have the memories. Yeah, but still, 2 days ago you were still acting like a retard with all the grace of a something with no grace at all. And I don't have my 20-year-old body anymore, you two do. So sue me, this shit is still new. Naruto got serious. Sakura, I'm not a medic. My specialty is chakra manipulation and fuinjutsu, so I can theorize about why shit like this happens but not the science behind some things, so I have a question. Technically, Sasuke should have gone insane with the influx of 8 years of memories to his 12-year-old brain, but he didn't, and I'm wondering why. Naruto looked over at Sasuke with a teasing twinkle in his eye. After all, the great and mighty Uchiha Sasuke-sama is still only human. Thank God, Sasuke muttered, sulkily. I totally wasn't sure of my humanity after Orochimaru's first couple experimental injections. He wasn't really joking, even if his tone was sarcastic. The Ten-no-Jun transformation was monstrous. Not that he had anything against Jugo, of course, but really. Naruto and Sakura stared at him, blank-faced and worried respectively. I'm not positive, so Sasuke, you might have to correct me on a few things, Sakura began. Sasuke agreed and she continued. Because the Sharingan is a Dijitsu, it requires extra neural pathways in the brain and faster synapses than normal. Sakura looked at the dark-eyed boy for confirmation. Sasuke nodded. At this age Sasuke had already awakened his Sharingan, but it had been trauma-sealed the same night. Sasuke nodded again. So he should already have built the necessary extra neural pathways and quick-firing synapses. Therefore, with the rewinding of time, the evolution of his Sharingan probably triggered the same chakra pathways that evolve those specific neurons more quickly than normal and allow for the Sharingan's eidetic memory function to let Sasuke keep his memories without losing any mental acuity. In fact, Sakura paused her medical technibabble and frowned, gathering her thoughts. Sasuke's probably more mentally stable now than he was the first time he was this age. Sasuke's sweat dropped, but internally agreed that according to his memories and general countenance 3 days ago, he was probably much closer to his older counterpart in mentality than his raging vengeance obsession of last week. While thinking over Sakura's explanation, he came upon an interesting idea. Hey Naruto, if it was the saturation of Itachi's chakra that caused the glitch in the jutsu in my case, does that mean that because Itachi is, well, Itachi, he will also have his memories? I didn't think of that really, but probably. Naruto turned to Sakura. That will make Hokage Gigi's job a lot easier if that's the case, Sakura. Sakura nodded before Naruto faced Sasuke again. Oh, by the way, now that I think about it, you should be careful, Sasuke. You may be able to access all the Sharingan abilities of your Eternal Manjikyu, but since they're your original eyes, you will probably still go blind the more you use them. The conversation continued late into the afternoon. Sakura had told her mom that she'd be out most of the day, citing genjutsu and kunai practice. Naruto and Sasuke had no parental authority to report to, so they had no problems. Near the end of their planning session, they decided that Sasuke needed to get his younger body used to using his techniques from his older self, including training with the Chokuto, refining his chakra control and raising his chakra capacity. Sakura decided to continue practicing her medical techniques on Sasuke after the predictable spars with Naruto. Finally, the trio decided to one-up Kakashi during his inevitable bell test by doing teamwork-oriented training in a secluded training ground behind the Hokage monument. Naruto offered dinner to his friends, who declined politely, knowing the blonde was living on a limited budget. Sending them off from his apartment window, Naruto lay down and contemplated the next few months. It was February, they only had till mid-April to get everything put together before the shitstorm of Geninhood and the Chunin exams would hit. Hatake Kakashi was rather unamused when the Hokage told him he'd be testing another potential Genin squad. In fact, he was so disgruntled by this turn of events that he just had to take it out on the poor Genin who got stuck with him as possible Jounin sensei. This would have been extremely annoying to said Genin had they not been expecting this exact circumstance, seeing as it had already happened to them 8 years ago, or an hour ago, as the case may be. The 3 potential students had been sitting in their classroom waiting for their sensei for an hour already, knowing they still had another 2.5 to go before their habitually tardy sensei would deign to show his face, or mask, to his new soon-to-be teammates. Iruka had left the room 15 minutes prior, leaving the trio alone in the classroom. Unlike the last time this occurred, Sasuke was not brooding in a corner, Sakura was not having a one-sided conversation with the back of his head, and Naruto was not pulling a prank. Okay, so Naruto did pull a prank or two, but eventually the trio settled into a haphazard triangle with the blonde sitting on the row of desks above the other two, Sasuke sitting on the desk the next row down and Sakura on the bench a few feet from Sasuke's position. The pink-haired girl looked up at her blue-eyed time travel partner before speaking. Naruto, what's the plan for team introductions and the bell test? Are we gonna play the introductions like the first time? Dobe, fangirl, and brooding douche, cough, sorry, I mean tragic orphan with a dark countenance. Sasuke snorted derisively, acknowledging Sakura's jab at his former personality, or lack thereof. Respectively, or are we going to do it by our current mindsets? She continued as if Sasuke hadn't interrupted her at all. Well, as I'm still wearing this please attack me I am right here orange, and you're still wearing that dark red battle dress, we could play it that way. We know that we're no longer like that, I've shown more of my skill, you're no longer primarily a fangirl, and Sasuke's lightened up, even if it's only with the 2 of us. The academy records haven't really changed though, I mean, I purposely failed so that we could catch Mizuki out, and get that over with, so I'm still considered the dead last in class rankings. Sakura and Sasuke exchanged a look and rolled their eyes as Naruto continued musing to himself. Finally Sasuke got fed up with Naruto's rambling and broke in. I've decided. We're doing this Uzumaki style. We'll play up our former roles for introductions, give a terrible first impression, then we'll go seriously or, at least semi-seriously for the bell test. We'll present ourselves at the bell test as a cohesive team, showing our true colors. Sasuke smirked at Naruto, because even if Sasuke wasn't a reclusive jerk anymore he was still an Uchiha, and Uchihas don't smile like genuine people, except on special occasions. We'll basically prank his tardy ass. The other 2 looked at each other wide-eyed, then stared at Sasuke. I think the team finally grew a personality, Naruto said with an exaggerated tone of awe. Sasuke frowned. Dobe. But Sasuke's not really a comment wasn't enough to stem the flow of sarcasm from the other 2. He decided to play a prank. I think I'm in shock. Sakura stood and started looking the raven-haired boy over. Do you think he's sick? She asked Naruto as she placed a hand on the Uchiha's forehead. His hatite was tied around his upper right arm. I don't know, is his temperature okay? The blonde asked in mock concern. Sasuke had had enough. He smacked Sakura's hand away and glared at his blonde teammate. Both Naruto and Sakura couldn't help it. They finally gave in to the laughter that was lingering under their actions. Sorry Sasuke, it was just too good to pass up, Naruto said through his fading hysterics. When you 2 are done acting your IQ instead of your age, we can continue making good use of the time left before Kakashi shows up, Sasuke said in a dangerous tone of voice. Oh, that was uncalled for team. Use your tanki. Sakura broke it up. Okay, enough. Sorry Sasuke, the rosette said sincerely. When the 3 of them finally settled down, they ended up sitting together on the floor at the front of the classroom in a triangle formation. The trio was back to back and holding hands. They had their eyes closed and looked oddly like they were group meditating. What they were really doing, however, was a chakra concentration and control exercise they had created about 3 weeks prior when they ran out of patience with the traditional exercises. One person in the triangle was designated the beginner, who channeled chakra to his or her palm, where the next person in the group picked up the wave and channeled the chakra from the first hand to the next, where the following person picked it up and brought it back to the first person in the group, where the leader could then either continue the circle, speeding up the transition of the chakra, or change the direction of the chakra flow. Not only did this help increase the control of a shinobi's chakra through his or her inner chakra coils, but it also helped with chakra sensing, as one had to constantly keep track of the trail of chakra around the circle. When Naruto felt Kakashi's chakra signature approaching the academy building, he put a stop to the exercise and told the others to get in position, alerting them to the imminent arrival of the cycloptic jounin. While Naruto sat in the back of the classroom tuning out Sakura's fangirling and Sasuke's attempts to ignore her, he was watching the chalkboard eraser he'd arranged in the door jamb earlier. He decided he felt a small amount of pity for Kakashi. He knew the silver-haired man would let the eraser fall on his spiky mess of hair as a ploy to get them to underestimate him, and while that might not have had any real consequences the first time they had gone through this scenario, this time Naruto actually took the time to prepare, because he knew the older man would be extremely late, and he was bored out of his mind. He'd even played a game of Shugi with Kurama in his mindscape, and lost, and Naruto despised Shugi. Naruto sighed and bounced in his seat. Kakashi moved slowly through the halls of the academy. He knew he was nearly 4 hours late, but honestly didn't care. He never really wanted to take a team. The only reason he even tested teams was because he felt that if he could impart Obito's little pearl of wisdom to the next generation, even if they ended up failing horrifically, it would be worth it to waste the 3 or 4 hours it took to do so. When he spotted the chalk duster stuck in the door jamb, he mentally took a deep breath, then he sighed out loud and stuck his head in the room, opening the door just enough to allow the eraser to fall on his head, not realizing the chalk on the duster wasn't actually chalk, but high-strength, heat-activated, fluorescent orange itching powder. The masked shinobi looked at his prospective genin, the bright orange, blue and yellow thing rolling on the floor in hysterics, the pink-haired, green-eyed, teacher's pet who was alternating between apologizing profusely for one teammate and making doe eyes at the other, and the Uchiha who was glaring at him over steepled fingers. "My first impression of you is I hate you," Kakashi said with his signature eye smile. "Meet me on the roof in 5 minutes, he finished, and used the shunshin to get out of the classroom in such a hurry that he missed the looks that passed between his 3 possible students, and the laughter that followed. Kakashi sat on the railing of the roof wondering why his head was beginning to itch, and watched as his students came through the door onto the roof. Naruto was pouting and cradling a rapidly healing bruised cranium, and Sakura was following Sasuke, still trying to have a conversation with the raven-haired preteen who was still ignoring her. The itching continued to grow in strength as his students sat on the bleachers in front of him. He resisted the urge to scratch at his hair and asked them to introduce themselves. Sensei, will you give us an example?" Sakura asked, looking the epitome of innocent goody two-shoes. Kakashi was just wondering how the hell she managed to make Kunoichi of the year while being unable to introduce herself without an example. He did, however, answer. Rubbing at the back of his head, hoping it would help the itching subside, he smiled and missed the looks of amusement his genin threw at each other while watching his hair slowly develop patches of fluorescent orange. "I'm Hatake Kakashi. I have likes, and I have dislikes too. I have lots of hobbies. As for dreams, well, I had one last night." As he finished his introduction, his eye smile turned up a notch, and what the trio could see of his facial expression became mildly plastic. He forced himself to lower his arm and ignore the continued itching. He grabbed his wrist with his other hand, and opened his single gray eye to see the expression of incredulity on his students' faces. While he thought they were sweat-dropping at his introduction and was congratulating himself on throwing them off, they were really just amused at his introduction, and incredulous at the lengths he would go to not scratch at his now mostly orange hair in front of them. They could see the tension in his neck and shoulders and his white knuckles on the hand that was gripping the wrist of the other. "You in the orange, your turn," Kakashi prompted. "Hi. I'm Uzumaki Naruto Databayo. I like ramen, especially the ramen Iraka-sensei buys me from Ichiraku, and Sakura-chan. I dislike the 3 minutes it takes for ramen to cook, and my hobby is trying all sorts of different flavors of ramen. Was I really this much of an idiot when I was younger?" Naruto asked Kurama while he continued his introduction. "And gardening. My dream is to be Hokage, so everyone will acknowledge my existence." He pumped his fist in the air. "Yes, Kit, you were that stupid. You're barely less stupid now. Now let me go back to my nap, flesh bag. I still need to finish recovering my chakra from our time travel stunt. Thank you for your glowing praise and ego stroking, Kurama. You're such a great friend." Naruto heard Kurama snort in vague recognition of the jab as he retreated to a deeper part of Naruto's mind. Of Naruto's 3 observers, Two were in awe of his excellent rendition of his first introduction, and the third was not impressed, but recognized that by all rights Naruto should have a worse attitude than the Uchiha was displaying. You bubblegum go. Sakura nodded, unfazed by the insult. My name is Haruno Sakura. The boy I like is, I mean my likes are. She shot a glance at Sasuke, squeal. My dislikes are Inopig, and Naruto. Kakashi's sweat dropped. My hobbies are. She looked at Sasuke with hearts in her eyes, squeal. My dream is squeal. She finished, staring at her dark-eyed teammate with a love-struck expression on her face. The Jounin sensei to be was simultaneously awestruck and horrified by the sheer dedication Sakura showed to the object of her fangirl fantasies. I guess girls of this age are more interested in love than ninjutsu, Kakashi thought with a forlorn sigh. Naruto and Sasuke were terrified by her apparent return to fangirldom before remembering that she was just acting. Okay, you next, Rain Cloud, Kakashi nodded at Sasuke. Sasuke leaned forward, tenting his fingers and resting his elbows on his knees, taking the typical position: angry, revenge-obsessed, pre-genin. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. My likes and dislikes are none of your business. My hobby is training, and my dream isn't a strong enough word. I have an ambition. I will revive my clan and kill a certain man. Sakura squealed like the fangirl she used to be, causing everyone else to cringe. Internally Sasuke winced, but he managed to keep his facial expression fairly placid. He remembered how clouded his mind was before regaining his memories. Everything revolved around Itachi, but now he had people who cared about him, whom he could care about in return. Kakashi just stared. I have an orange-clad idiot, a pink-haired fangirl, and a psychotic avenger. I definitely have my work cut out for me. The council won't let me fail this team, and the Sandaime would flatten me if I even tried. He sighed again and continued to strain himself in an attempt to ignore the itching, his eye smile causing him to miss the amusement of the three not-genins sitting in front of him. Well, tomorrow we'll begin our duties. What kind of duties? Sakura asked. Survival training, the silver-haired man replied. We did survival training in the academy. Naruto complained with an ear-splitting whine. You've never done survival training like this. What's different about it? The green-eyed girl questioned innocently. Well, it would be you three against me. Kakashi's eye smile brightened a notch, and his grip on his wrist tightened. Time to scare them a little. Kakashi started to laugh lightly. He let go of his wrist, and crossed his arms tightly across his chest to stop himself from scratching. What? What is it? Naruto asked. What's so funny, sensei? The pink-haired girl asked, looking slightly disenchanted with her sensei. Well, Kakashi started, smothering an anticipatory giggle, when I tell you this, you guys are totally gonna freak. Freak out? What, why? Inquired the blonde, playing along. Kakashi's face took on a dark expression. Of the 27 graduates, only 9 will be chosen to become genin. The rest will be sent back to the academy. This training is actually a really hard test, with failure rate of over 66%. When his captive audience showed an appropriate amount of outright panic, fear, and mild discomfiture respectively, Kakashi took on an extremely happy countenance. No way! I worked so hard just to pass the genin exam, and now this. What was the point of passing the genin exam in the first place? Naruto gave the Jounin a full-on freak out, causing him untold amounts of vindictive mirth. Ma, that was just to see who even had a chance of becoming genin. What? Anyway, tomorrow you'll just have to show all your shinobi skills on the training field. Bring all your shinobi equipment. I also suggest you don't eat breakfast or you'll throw up. All the information is on this paper. Kakashi handed out the papers, and disappeared in the puff of smoke indicative of a shunshin. In his haste to leave and figure out why he was itching so badly, he missed the snorts of laughter and group hysterics in which his new students were indulging themselves. Following their bout of hysterics, Naruto, Sakura, and Sasuke left the roof by walking down the side of the building. Well, we're done with introductions. Why don't we get you out of your lethally orange jumpsuit, Naruto? Sakura said. Sure, I need a whole new wardrobe anyway. My closet is full of these things, Naruto replied, tugging on the hem of his jacket. You need to get out of that dress too. Those white circles just paint a target on you. Sasuke could also use a change, couldn't you, Sasuke? HN. There was a collective sweat drop from Naruto and Sakura. We'll take that as a yes, the pink-haired girl said. We really need to relearn how to speak Uchiha, she whispered to Naruto, causing him to cough to cover a laugh. Sasuke gave them the stink eye, well aware they were talking about him. They decided to go to Higurashi Shinobi Outfitters and Quality Weapons, run by Tenten's family. Sasuke knew that this time he'd probably never end up with Orochimaru's Kuzunaji no Tsurugi, and the chokuto he pilfered from his family armory wasn't made for channeling chakra. It was beginning to chip and fall apart from all his lightning training. So he decided to either buy or commission a new sword from the shop if he couldn't find what he wanted in stock. 2 hours later, Naruto came out of the changing room clad in his outfit of choice, holding several sets to replace the orange monstrosities in his closet. The blonde moved toward the register to pay. He wore a V-neck black tank top with a hood attached to the back collar, and the Uzumaki swirl emblazoned in burnt orange on the lower back, covered by a chain mesh shirt 3/4 sleeve shirt. The hood hung over the back of the mesh shirt, falling to just between his shoulder blades. He also exchanged the blue fabric on his hataite for black with long tails, similar to what he had acquired on his training trip with Jiraiya. The blonde switched his orange crop pants for the standard issue cargo style in black, wrapped at the ankle with gray bandages. His blue ninja sandals were replaced with black shin-high combat boots fitted with non-reflective steel toe caps. Finally, he finished off his look with standard wrist-length fingerless gloves with non-reflective metal guards on the back etched with his clan's swirl. Naruto's shuriken and kunai pouches were attached at his leg and waist with the same gray bandages, and he carried 2 chakra-conductive, double-edged tantus sheathed in an X-shape just above the Uzumaki swirl on his lower back, so the grips were held at an angle from each hip for easy access. Naruto's sleeveless shirt was pretty much skin-tight, so when he moved the shirt rode up an inch or two, showing a strip of tanned, toned flesh and a part of his seal through the mesh. As they all finished paying for their clothes and weapons and moved out onto the street and began to walk in the direction of the Uchiha compound, Sakura teased him mercilessly about emulating Sai. However, Naruto had ammunition to return fire. Sakura's new outfit was black and extremely dark red, close to a deep garnet color. Her new outfit consisted of a black mock turtleneck tank top that cut off 2 or 3 inches below her growing bust line, showing the bottom half of her ribcage and all of her toned stomach. The black fabric didn't cover her shoulders at all but cut an angle across her collar bones from her neck to just below her armpits. This was covered barely by a cap sleeve, deep garnet-colored, hooded, tunic-length jacket that attached with one hook across her chest, emphasizing it. The black tank and jacket didn't meet over her shoulders, exposing a triangle of creamy skin between the jacket and the tank. She wore a mid-thigh length black apron skirt similar to the light pink one Naruto had seen her in after he returned from his training trip, with tight leggings, in the same garnet color as her jacket, that ended just below her knees. On her feet were heeled shinobi sandals in the same fashion as Tsunade's. Instead of wearing her hataite, she had the metal plate clipped onto her skirt just left of center at the hem. Her med pouch was attached to her thigh at the side, split in her skirt with black bandages. Instead of kunai, shuriken and senbon pouches, she had Naruto create modified storage seals on her new elbow-length, padded knuckle, black gloves, so she didn't have to reach for her weapons. For the last piece of her transformation, she pulled her hair up in a bun, tied with the red cloth Ino had once given her as a sign of their friendship, letting 2 long pieces of pink hair frame her face. You shouldn't be talking, Sakura. Your new outfit shows way more stomach than mine. Are you sure you never envied Sai's fashion sense? The blonde bit back. Agreed Sasuke, nodding with a smirk. Well, you have no room to talk, mister. I'm so hot, let me show off all my ripped stomach muscles to my fangirls and opponents. Maybe they'll faint and I won't have to deal with them. Sakura started in on Sasuke. What was with that extremely obvious bit of fashion fanservice we saw in that base in Kusa? Did Orochimaru give it to you? Was he just exercising his pedophiliac tendencies, or did you choose as yourself? Sasuke flushed, pink tinting his aristocratic cheekbones, whether in embarrassment or indignant rage, Naruto wasn't sure. And that purple-ass bow, did you really have to, Sasuke? That's like declaring that you're Orochi team's bitch. Did he molest you with that disgustingly prehensile and extendable tongue of his? Sakura continued, ending in a babying tone. Sakura latched on to Sasuke and continued to coo over him, lamenting that her brother had been molested by the pedophiliac snake bastard, petting at his hair and telling him that it would all be alright. As this went on, Sasuke's face continued to get more and more red till he looked like he was about to explode when Naruto finally intervened. Pulling Sakura off Sasuke by lifting her up by her waist and placing her on the ground several feet from the prime Sasuke bomb, he spoke. That's enough, Sakura. I think we've antagonized the team enough for one day. He won't work well with us on the bell test tomorrow if he's too annoyed at us to even look us in the face without activating his Sharingan and wishing he could slice us into little pieces with his new chakra-conductive Chokuto. Sasuke, whose new outfit consisted of a dark blue standard-issue mock turtleneck, arm guards in the same design as the one he wore in the past future for the Chunin exams except white on black instead of black on white, and standard-issue blue shinobi pants wrapped at the ankles with the standard white bandages, and blue shinobi sandals, wore the most simplistic clothing. He had his hataite tied around his neck, replacing the usual high collars of the Uchiha clan. He also had the Uchiha Uchiwa on both his shoulders and across his back instead of the standard issue red swirl of the Uzumaki. He did, however, keep the necklace of the Uzumaki swirl under his tank, against his chest to remind him of all he and Naruto had gone through to cement their relationship as sworn brothers. He equipped his new chokuto at the backside of his waist in a standard issue sheath that doubled as a belt upon which he attached his shuriken pouch. His kunai pouch was bound to his thigh with the usual white bandages. Sasuke chinned derisively, and took a deep breath, letting the blood recede from his face. He glared at Sakura for a minute or two until she apologized, then let out a frustrated sigh and mentally smacked himself for asking the two to stay the night with him before the bell test the next morning. He tuned out the conversation between Naruto and Sakura and concentrated on getting home as fast as possible. At least Naruto's a better cook than both Sakura and I, Sasuke thought, reminding himself that he'd get some good food out of his patients with their poking fun at him. Apparently, when Jiraiya found out that Naruto had been living on Ichiraku ramen, instant ramen, and the infrequent baskets of vegetables Kakashi used to bring him, the Toad Sage insisted that Naruto learn how to cook. It turned out that despite his years of not cooking, Naruto had his mother's talent in the kitchen that few could match. A week ago, Naruto had promised to cook the dinner before the bell test and make a large breakfast bento to take to the training field so they could eat while waiting for Kakashi. It just so happened, however, that Sasuke's place had the best kitchen, and the most room, letting them each have their own room instead of having to cram into Naruto's tiny apartment, or trying to convince Sakura's parents to let two almost teenage boys spend the night in her room. After a delicious dinner, courtesy of Naruto, and Sasuke's kitchen, presetting Sasuke's state-of-the-art rice cooker, imported from Yuki no Kuni, to have the rice finish cooking 2 hours before they would have to leave to the training ground, and preparing all the ingredients for tomorrow's bento, the three of them gathered in Sasuke's sitting room to plan for the next day's test. The next morning, Kakashi arrived at training ground 7 extra late, just a half hour before noon, almost 5 hours after the appointed meeting time. He was more than irritated with these brats, and they were going to taste his ire. The itching powder had washed out with just a plain shower, but the orange in his hair hadn't faded a bit, and he couldn't manage to cover it with the genjutsu. Every time he tried, the genjutsu fizzled and he couldn't figure out why. He'd already been asked about his youthfully bright hair when he'd been accosted by Guyot on his way to the memorial stone that morning, teased by Asuma on his way to his team, and covertly snickered at by several of the office nin in the Hokage Tower when he begged the Hokage to allow him to fail this team. When he greeted his team with his usual eye smile and bad excuses, that didn't really manage to conceal his killing intent at all. He was expecting a shout of outrage, and a scream of liar, from his louder students. The unfortunate thing about an eye smile is that it impairs your vision, especially when you only have one 100% usable eye. What it doesn't impair, though, are a ninja's danger sense. The normally silver-haired Jounin wasn't feeling any of the anger, and ki he expected to be directed at him. Kakashi opened his eye, not changing his happy-looking countenance, but not lowering his ki either, finally taking in the sight of his students' new outfits and attitudes. To say Kakashi was shocked was like saying that the Sandame enjoys a smoke every now and then, a massive understatement. The 3 genin were standing in front of the Jounin, not at all annoyed, irritated, or otherwise upset. Sakura was standing hand on hip, weight shifted to the right, smiling at him in what seemed like an indulging fashion, as if she expected his tardy behavior. Her new outfit showed of her developing figure nicely, but he saw a lack of weapons pouches and was curious as to what she would do without them. He was beginning to speculate about what could have changed between yesterday afternoon and this morning. This question was firmly cemented in his brain when he took in Sasuke and Naruto, who were to her left, Sasuke smirking, and Naruto leaning on him with an arm resting on one of Sasuke's shoulders, wearing a sunny smile. He also noticed their new weaponry and clothing, idly wondering if they could use them at all or if they were just for show. What he didn't notice was the one thing that was congruous in all 3 outfits: a single scuffed-looking black stud in each of his students' left earlobe. Even if he had noticed, there was no doubt he wouldn't have realized its true use anyway. But his ignorance would cause his humiliation at the hands of his genin. Kakashi came back to attention and placed the alarm clock on the stump next to him. "Okay, it's set for noon," he said, still expecting some sort of exclamation of incredulity, but receiving an indulging expression from his students instead. Kakashi realized he was probably missing something but put it out of his mind, not even trying to look underneath the underneath, still going on their introductions from the day before and their academy records. Instead he continued, "Here are 2 bells, your job is to take them from me. You can even use kunai and shuriken." The Hitaki paused here, expecting some sort of response, other than the small smiles, smirk and nods he was getting, but pushed on. "Those who don't get a bell by noon will get tied to one of these training posts, and won't receive lunch. I'll also eat right in front of you." He held up the bells. "There are only 2 bells, so one of you will definitely be tied to a stump. And the person who doesn't manage to take a bell fails, so at least one of you will be sent back to the academy. You won't succeed unless you come at me with the intent to kill, so use all those fancy weapons you brought with you, K? I smiled again. Rather than the shouts of outrage he expected, he just got a small chuckle, snicker, or HN from each of his students respectively. The copynin was getting really confused, but the bell test had never failed him before. It was now 20 minutes to noon and start. All 3 students disappeared in different directions. When the trio each reached their spots in the forest, with a good view of the clearing in which Kahashi was standing, they each channeled a small pulse of chakra into the earring their sensei failed to notice. Naruto here, do you copy? Came across the mental link created by the minuscule seals etched onto the stud. Roger, responded 2 voices. Plan Ka 1 is a go, I repeat Ka 1 is a go. Came the mental command from Naruto. Order received. HN on it. Naruto created a shadow clone and had it go engage Kakashi in a primarily taijutsu and kenjutsu battle, during which the clone surprised Kakashi with Naruto's expertise with the Suma's Hien chakra flow technique using his double-edged tantu. In Kakashi's shocked state, the Naruto clone was able to herd the Jounin towards Sasuke's position where they had set a ninja wire trap while waiting for Kakashi to arrive, allowing the Raven to set it off. The now orange-haired Jounin finally noticed that he was being pushed toward an ambush and Kawarimi'd with one of the log sections scattered around the training ground just in time to see the log get sliced into pieces by the sharp wires. He sweat-dropped at the close call and watched in shock as Naruto's clone dispersed in a puff of chakra smoke. Plan Ka 1 is a bust, regroup for Ka 2, I repeat regroup for Ka 2, came Sasuke's voice over the link. Roger, responded Sakura. Already in place and ready for action, team. HN Yuzuratanki. On my way. After nearly getting shredded by the trap and not realizing Sasuke was in the tree where the trap had been set off, he decided to pursue Sakura, hoping to take her out quickly. The 3 younger shinobi had been expecting this, so Naruto had a clone hinged as Sakura underneath the tree he was situated in, acting as a decoy for Sakura to catch Kakashi in a genjutsu for just enough time to allow Sasuke to get the paralytic sedative seal Naruto and Sakura had created together on the Jounin. Naruto and Sakura were standing as backup, the blonde with more seals, and Sakura with Saban coated in mild poisons that would do the same thing as the seals if all else failed. This time, however, Kakashi was too sure of his victory over the supposed fangirl. He didn't think to watch for the others and was caught in Sakura's genjutsu for just long enough to allow Sasuke to tag him. The last thing the Jounin saw before he passed out were his 3 students standing above him with smirks on their faces holding the bells between them. Kakashi woke tied to one of the stumps with high-grade ninja wire, hands tied separately wrist over wrist to prevent hand seals. Becoming aware of the situation, he sweat-dropped at the scene before him. The 3 were sitting in front of him eating out of a large 5-tier bento he had failed to notice earlier, sharing the food around, like the 2 bento boxes sitting on the stumps beside him didn't exist. Naruto was the first to notice Kakashi had woken. Oh, hey sensei, lunch? He offered, holding out a tier of the bento the 3 of them were eating from. Dobe, Sasuke berated from next to the blonde, he's tied up, it's not like he can eat by himself. Sakura then got up and cut Kakashi from the post. Ah, thanks, the Jounin said to Sakura while nodding at Naruto, accepting the bento and a pair of chopsticks. The team continued to eat, and Kakashi observed the interaction between his new students trying to figure out the dynamic between the 3. It seemed both Sakura and Sasuke deferred to Naruto, but the blonde took care to consider both of them before saying anything. It was really odd, considering their introductions the day before. At that point he decided to throw his opinions of the 3 out the window, and tried to gather more information before coming to more conclusions. When he finished eating, Kakashi set down the bento and spoke to his genin. Have you decided which of you gets a bell? Naruto gave him a fox grin that made Kurama proud. Sasuke and Sakura can have them, I have collateral, the blonde said, pulling out the older man's copy of Ika Ika from behind his back. Sasuke's ready and waiting to burn this little baby to a crisp if you don't pass us all. Although both my teammates argued about keeping a bell, and tried to give theirs to me, well, I'm me, so if one of us has to go back to the academy. He trailed off while gesturing in the direction of his stomach, then continued, well, you get the idea. His grin grew as he explained the situation. While Naruto's grin grew wider, so did Kakashi's uncovered eye. The Jounin started sweating as Sasuke started the hand seals for the katan, Gakakyu favored by the Uchiha clan. Ma, Kakashi calmed, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. It's okay, you all pass. I just wanted to make sure you all understood the point of this test was teamwork. You can put the innocent book down. In fact, you better just give it back to me. I think we should still burn the stupid pervert book, Sakura mumbled, causing Kakashi to worry for the continued safety of his Ika Ika collection. Naruto eventually handed the book over, but not without making Kakashi sweat a bit more first. After packing up the tiered bantu, the not silver-haired anymore ninja led his students over to the memorial stone and gave his little speech, ending with the creed he'd received from Obito: "Those who disobey the rules are scum, but those who disregard their comrades are worse than scum," he finished. "So," Kakashi said, "anyone want to tell me how you guys managed to communicate without alerting me?" The three younger ninjas shared a look, and Naruto shrugged, then nodded. The three brushed their hair aside to expose the stud. "Okay, what's an earring got to do with it?" Kakashi asked, confused. Naruto sighed, then explained the workings of the seals on the earring. Kakashi was stunned. "Who did you get to do the seal work on the earrings?" he asked. The blonde pouted at him, and Sakura and Sasuke both pointed at the displeased blonde. Kakashi's eye widened in surprise as he took in the information. Then he smiled at the trio. "Ma, I have to report your passing to the Hokage, so we'll meet here tomorrow at 0900 for our first day as Team 7, he said, turning to walk away. "Oh yeah, Naruto? How do I get this color out of my hair?" the Jounin asked, turning around to give the blonde a good dose of ki along with a blinding eye smile. That? The blonde rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. "It comes out with sake. It's my one-of-a-kind formula, so don't tell anyone else, Kay?" he requested. Sakura burst out in laughter, and Sasuke snorted in amusement. Kakashi just looked at the blonde incredulously before shaking his head in resignation and walking off toward the Hokage Tower. When Kakashi arrived at Training Ground 7 the next morning, his students were surprised to see him. Not because they didn't expect him to show up. No, it was because they didn't expect him to show up earlier than 2 hours late. But there he was, only half an hour late, sweat dropping at his students' incredulous expressions. Kakashi decided to break the tension and start the day. The day before, when he'd informed the Hokage of his team's passing, he'd asked for their personnel files. He'd gone over them trying to find whatever he missed the first time, seeing as his students were completely different from the morons their files made them out to be. If the silver-haired Jounin had been watching the Hokage a little more closely, he would have noticed the aged man laughing at him as he puzzled over the files. Later that night, Kakashi decided that he needed to redo introductions, hopefully with more accurate results. He gestured for them all to sit. "Ma, today we're going to start with introductions again. Maybe this time you'll be a little more forthcoming, any? I'll go first." He started, taking in the wide-eyed looks of disbelief crossed with a bit of vindictive pleasure coming from his students. Kakashi was beginning to wonder if they hadn't hoped he'd do just this when he realized their files were inaccurate, but didn't dare believe he'd actually do it. After he and his students had arranged themselves in a haphazard circle in front of the training post, he smiled. "My name is Hatake Kakashi. I like broiled sori and miso soup with eggplant, my comrades, teamwork and ika. I dislike people who don't care for their comrades and don't respect the dead. My hobbies are pissing people off, defying people's expectations and reading ika. My dream is to make you 3 into outstanding shinobi. Your turn." Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke shared a look and the blonde nodded. Sasuke took initiative and started first. "My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like tomatoes, onigiri with okaka and whatever Naruto cooks, my teammates, training and kenjutsu. I dislike a lot of things including but not limited to fangirls, the council of elders, the majority of the villagers and a certain man." Kakashi's sweat dropped when he heard this but didn't interrupt, obviously thinking Sasuke was referring to Itachi. "My hobbies are training with my team, growing tomatoes and hanging out with Naruto and Sakura." The blonde smiled at Sasuke and Sakura gave him a short hug which he, much to Kakashi's surprise, did not shrug off. "My dream is to become strong enough to help my team create a better future." It was Sakura's turn. "My name is Haruno Sakura. I like Anmitsu, tempura, and whatever Naruto cooks. I also like my teammates, Iryo Ninjutsu and a certain Tanuki." Naruto leered at her and Sakura blushed, while Sasuke snickered at the byplay. "I dislike blatant perversion." Kakashi swallowed hard as she eyed his ika, idiots who ignore their instincts of self-preservation, the council of elders, a certain man, a certain snake-like pedophile and his pet beetle and the complete morons who live in the village. She growled, and Naruto gave her a hug and a soothing look. Kakashi watched the interaction of his students with confusion. "My hobbies are reading, training with my teammates, and learning new things. My dream for the future is to become an Iryonin on par with or greater than Senju Tsunade and to become strong enough to help my team create a better future." Her teammates smiled at her, although Sasuke's was more of a smirk of approval than a smile, but the message came across just the same. It was Naruto's turn. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I'm the 3rd Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Kitsune." Kakashi was astounded that Naruto basically just announced the existence of his burden, but when he took in the reactions of the other two, they didn't seem surprised or disturbed or anything. In fact, They just nodded as if they knew all along, which Kakashi deduced that they had. Then his one visible eye widened. He had just picked up the fact that Naruto said he was the third Jinchuriki, not just the Jinchuriki, which meant he knew who had carried the bijou before him, and most likely knew who his parents were. Naruto smiled and nodded, managing to follow his former future lover's train of thought. Kakashi's eye widened even further, then closed in an approving eye smile. His student obviously held no resentment toward his parents for placing such a large burden on him. Naruto decided it was time to continue. I like ramen and home-cooked meals, fuinjutsu, my teammates, and my precious people. I dislike people who abandon their comrades, the council of elders, a certain man, snakes and helmet beetles. My hobbies are cooking, gardening, pranking and training with my teammates. And my dream for the future, my dream is to become Hokage and with the help of my teammates, create a better future. The blonde finished his introduction with a smile and the copy-nin smiled back. Kakashi clapped his hands together. Okay, now that we all know each other, although it seems that the introductions were really more for my benefit than theirs, I need to know the extent of your abilities. The bell test was supposed to do that, but it seems that the three of you against me is a bit much. The Jounin was a little ashamed to admit that his 3 green genin were a little much for him to take all at once, not that he had been using his full strength, but still. His students smiled indulgently, and he tried not to grimace under his mask. You're just going to tell me where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then we'll begin training. I'll just give the information for all of us, Naruto said. Is that alright, Kakashi-sensei? It'll be faster that way and Sasuke or Sakura will fill in the blanks at the end if I miss something. That's fine, Naruto. Me first, I guess. I'm a frontline assault specialist with skills in espionage, trapping and infiltration. I'm mostly an all-rounder, but my main strengths are high-powered, diversionary and offensive ninjutsu, taijutsu, fuinjutsu, mid-battle tactics and trap making. My stealth is also extremely high. He smirked smugly, remembering the wild goose chases he'd led the ninja forces on after his many pranks. My weaknesses are in chakra control and genjutsu, as well as long-term strategy. I can break out of most genjutsu, but with my extreme chakra reserves I'll probably never be able to cast any, due to lack of control. I lack defensive ninjutsu in my arsenal. I also have skills in tantojutsu, as you can tell. Naruto gestured to the 2 tantus strapped to his back. Kakashi was in awe of the succinct, seemingly accurate report from what was supposed to be a fresh out of the academy rookie. Next for Sakura, she's a frontline support fighter, with specialization in Iryo ninjutsu and taijutsu. She's also well versed in genjutsu, and an extremely good strategist. As an Iryo nin, her chakra control is incredible, but her reserves are lower than average. But because she has practically perfect control, she can stretch her lower reserves to last her longer than most ninja with average control and reserves. Her stealth is very good, and her weakness at this point is her lower than average reserves and lack of offensive ninjutsu. Naruto looked at Sakura, prompting her to mention anything he may have missed, but she just smiled and nodded. Sasuke is an all-rounder and frontline assault specialist like me, with skills in ninjutsu, taijutsu, genjutsu and kenjutsu. His Sharingan is active and fully matured. Kakashi looked at his raven-haired genin with a surprised look on his face, and Sasuke flashed his Sharingan with a smirk. One of the reasons he was assigned to this squad in particular was to help Sasuke develop and mature his Sharingan. Apparently the council was more out of the loop than he thought. Because of his Sharingan, Sasuke's genjutsu, ninjutsu and taijutsu are through the roof. He's got great stealth, on par with Sakura, and a high control of his higher-than-average chakra reserves. His weaknesses lie in his tendency toward arrogance and showing off. Sakura snorted, and Sasuke sighed, but nodded, agreeing that he tended to get arrogant about his abilities, and his disregard of supplementary ninjutsu such as kawarimi and henge. The dark-eyed boy glared at his blonde friend, but had to agree. Altogether, our team is well-rounded and our teamwork is astounding. Our main categorization as a team is a frontline assault team, but we could double as a fast response team, as we have all the necessary skills to engage in high-level battle or support another team in practically any situation. And as we have a fuinjutsu specialist, he pointed at himself, a fuinjutsu adept, he pointed at Kakashi, someone well-versed in the medical use of fuinjutsu, he pointed at Sakura, and someone who knows fuinjutsu basics, he pointed at Sasuke, we'd be able to prepare for pretty much any situation in advance and adapt to the field when we arrive. Anything I forgot? Naruto asked. Elemental affinities, Dobe. Thanks team. My primary affinity is wind, with a secondary of water, and a tertiary of earth when using the other chakra. The teams are a primary of lightning, with a secondary of fire, and Sakura's are a primary of earth and secondary of water. Kakashi's visible eye got wider and wider as Naruto continued the list. Kakashi lifted his Hitai to get a look at their reserves to see what he was working with. His jaw dropped. Naruto was comparing their reserves to the average jounin, not the average genin. His blonde student's reserves were bigger than any he'd ever seen, including the Hokage and the reserves of the previous Jinchuriki. Sasuke's were on par with his own, and Sakura's were larger than the average Chunin's. Kakashi cleared his throat, ignoring the smirks, sniggers and giggles coming from his subordinates. Anything else you guys want to tell me? Kakashi asked, hoping that he was done with surprises for the day. Oh yeah? We're all adept at elemental chakra flow exercises with at least our primary affinities. I used something similar to Asuma-sensei's Hien with my Tantu, as you may have deduced from our battle yesterday. And Sasuke practices lightning chakra flow with his Chokuto. Sakura generally doesn't use weaponry other than her fists, kunai, shuriken and saban, but can infuse her weapons with earth chakra if she feels it necessary. Kakashi managed to contain his shock, and just smiled at them, feeling a bit dizzy. The earring, Naruto, Sakura prompted. That's right, I made another earring for you. He pulled the stud out of one of the myriad of pockets in his pants, and held it out. I explained the Fuinjutsu engraved on them, and how they operate yesterday. They have an uninterrupted range of nearly 15 miles, and drain just a minuscule amount of chakra. The only way to interrupt the signal is with an extremely large burst of chakra, that could probably only be caused by a seal being forcibly broken or a battle between summons or bijou. The blonde continued, the Hokage knows we have them and has approved them for experimentation within our team. He was fibbing at this point. He had point-blank told the Sandame he was going to use them, and the Sandame had told him that it was fine and if they worked well, he'd commission 4 stud sets for the ANBU teams to use during the Chunin exams. We are not to point them out, or explain them to anybody. The fewer people who know, the better. If you are asked, you are to tell them that it's a fashion statement, or something else innocuous, and if they persist in questioning you, refer them to the Hokage. Kakashi was surprised at the commanding tone coming from one of his new genin, but understood that it was an order from the Hokage, and Naruto was just filling him in. Kakashi nodded, and Naruto smiled. If you don't have your ear pierced already, Sakura can do it now and heal it immediately, that way you don't have to worry about aftercare. The Kopinin acquiesced and took the stud from Naruto, allowing Sakura to pierce his ear and heal the flesh around the piercing. He then channeled some chakra to the earring to activate the seals and broadcast the test. This is Kakashi, do you all copy? Loud and clear, sensei, answered the mental voice of Sakura. HN clear as crystal, was Sasuke's reply. What next, sensei? Came Naruto's response. Happy with the results, the Jounin withdrew his chakra from the piercing, and proceeded to smile happily while telling them that they'd take their first mission today. He was no longer expecting the typical genin responses to his antics, having finally come to the conclusion that his genin were not in any way typical. They nodded with a resigned air, knowing that as fresh genin they'd only be getting D ranks. For the next 2 months Kakashi took them on daily D ranks, filling the rest of the day with training once they'd completed their mission. The training ranged from stamina to chakra control to supplementary jutsu and strategy and tactics. Finally the day came when they had had enough. After bringing Tora back to Madame Jimmy, Naruto pinned the Sandame with a glare and politely but pointedly asked him for a C rank. Kakashi's sweat dropped at Naruto's blatant disrespect, but had gotten used to the blonde's less-than-regulation interaction with the third. He backed up Naruto's request, stating their readiness over Irika's protests, knowing they had been ready for higher-ranking missions from the time they graduated. The Hokage, remembering a conversation he had with the blonde time traveler the week before about this specific mission, acquiesced with grace, telling the aghast Irika to show Tazuna into the room. Tazuna entered the room with all the grace of a drunken monkey. The smell of sake was so strong, both Naruto and Kakashi had to purposefully dull their sense of smell to tolerate being in the same room. The Jounin gave the Hokage the stink eye, knowing that the old man was getting kicks out of annoying him. The bridge builder greeted them. What's this? They're all a bunch of super brats. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke knew what was coming, but still found themselves irked at his blatant disregard of their hard-earned skills. The only vaguely competent-looking one is the masked pervert over there, the drunken man slurred, pointing with his sake bottle toward Kakashi. Without warning, Tazuna was pinned to the wall behind him with a variety of saban, shuriken and kunai. Sakura and Naruto smiled brightly at him and Sasuke looked at him without expression, but all of them were blasting the older man with small amounts of ki, the intensity of the ki increasing in concert with the intensity of their smiles. This is your first lesson about working with ninja, Tazuna-san. No matter how incompetent they look, you never bait the highly trained assassins. Naruto said politely and without malice in his voice, his nice guy demeanor betrayed by the ki he was exuding. Tazuna nodded frantically, muttering about skilled super brats, as Irika worked to unpin him from the wall, taking much more effort than he expected. As all this was taking place, Kakashi studied his blonde student. Over the few months he'd really known Naruto, The Jinchuriki had consistently managed to surprise him and flout his expectations. And that intrigued him. Naruto was a host of contradictions. He was exceptionally open, except when he was being cagey. He was strong and confident, except when he was so vulnerable and insecure it hurt to watch. Kakashi was glad Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke were so close. The Jounin had no experience as a pillar of emotional support. In fact, he wasn't quite sure he didn't need one himself. The blonde was extremely skilled, except in genjutsu where he still floundered like a fish out of water. The dichotomy of his student drew him in and wouldn't let him go. Not for the first time, Kakashi wondered if his students were really 12 and 13 years old. Pulling himself back to the situation at hand, he noticed Iruka had finally managed to unpin the client from the wall, and his students had scared the man into a semblance of sobriety. He pulled on his squad leader boots and took charge of the situation. "Ma, I'm going to take Tazuna to sober up and go over the details of the mission. Pack for an extended mission and meet at the main gate in an hour." He saluted the Hokage. I smiled at his students and shunshined away, dragging the now partially sober Tazuna with him. Sakura, Sasuke and Naruto saluted the Sandaime and nodded to Iruka as they followed the example of their sensei and also left the mission dispersal office using the shunshin. Iruka looked at the Hokage. "Did you know they could do that?" Sarutobi just sighed and buried his face in his hands. Following their departure from the mission dispersal office, Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke each returned home to gather their pre-packed storage scrolls they had made specifically for this mission. A week ago, knowing this mission was coming, the three co-conspirators had met to begin preparation for their first attempt at changing something big. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke had sat in Sasuke's living room around the coffee table, each taking a side. Naruto had 3 sealing scrolls with multiple seals running all down their length unrolled on the table, empty and ready to be used. On top of the sealing scrolls was a map and a blank scroll for note-taking. They were discussing their mission to Nami no Kuni. "So, we're going to make sure we get this mission to Nami. It will be important. I know Sakura got the full story out of me during the war, but I don't think Sasuke has heard everything yet." Naruto stopped talking and looked at his raven-haired brother, who just shook his head, looking curious. The blonde recounted his meeting with Haku in the forest a couple of days before their battle on the bridge, and what happened after Sasuke took the Senban Haku had meant for him. "I was so angry," Naruto recalled wistfully, "not that you took the blow for me. No, I was angry because I didn't know why you did it. You were stronger than me then. I was useless compared to you, so why did you sacrifice yourself for me, I wondered. You, who had, not a dream, an ambition, a reason to stay alive, why would you die for me? I was angry because I couldn't do anything to prevent you from dying, or getting hurt, as the case had been. I was so weak, there was nothing I could do. That was the first time I ever drew on Kurama's chakra, you know. All the negative emotions surrounding your supposed death caused me to lash out." Naruto sighed. "I was still so emotionally unstable then, even more so than you at that point," he said, giving Sasuke a pained smile. The dark-eyed boy raised an eyebrow indicating his disbelief. "Oh, it's true," the blonde continued. "I had just found someone I had come to care for, a precious person, in you, and then you were gone, just like that." He snapped his fingers, "at the hands of someone who could have been my friend. At the hands of someone who grew up like me, shunned and ignored, someone whose existence had been denied, someone who had found their precious person in our enemy, and someone who taught me something very important, and eventually changed my outlook on being a ninja." The blonde continued his story, mentioning how in the end, after hearing the boy's story, he had been unable to kill Haku. He told of how the older boy had sacrificed himself to save Zabuza by throwing himself in front of Kakashi's Raikiri, and how Zabuza had died at the hands of Gato's men. But not before making sure the diminutive, filthy rich, shit stain had met his maker at the hands of the Kirigakyu no Kijin. Sakura and Sasuke were entranced by the tale their teammate was weaving, disregarding the fact that they had actually been there through all of it. "You know, Naruto, you have a way with words. Have you ever thought about writing a book?" Sakura asked, after the blonde finished his tale. "Yeah, I did for a little while," Naruto answered. "Ero-sen used to have me edit his manuscripts while we were on our training trip to Bayo. But by the time I was ready to write my own stories, there was no time. No time for anything but training and getting stronger and fighting the Akatsuki." Sakura gave the blonde a hug and Naruto returned it with a sad smile. Sasuke cleared his throat. Not really wanting to break the cute family moment, but hoping to move on, he spoke. "After hearing it from that perspective, I think we should try to keep Haku and Zabuza alive. The best way to do that would be to either take out Gato after our first tangle with them, but before Zabuza is back in fighting order, or to find a way to stall until Gato and his thugs make it to the bridge at our second entanglement." Sakura and Naruto nodded. We also now know that the reason Zabuza tried to coup against Yagura in the first place was that he was against the bloodline massacres. If we can convince him to join the rebel forces under Terumi, or wait, is she Mizukage already? Naruto asked Sakura, who shook her head. She became Mizukage about a year into your training trip, but I'm sure if she had the help of Zabuza, who is an A-rank threat right now, but has the potential to be an S-rank threat with time to train instead of running from Onin, the rebels could win faster. So, Sasuke said, our objectives for this mission are to A. Complete the mission we will be hired for by Tazuna, and B. Keep Zabuza and Haku alive. And if we manage to complete objective B, there's letting Zabuza know about Terumi and her bloodline rebels. Yeah, that sounds about right. Now that we've worked that out, what do you think we need to pack to make sure we can complete our objectives? She had said, pulling them back to the point of the meeting. The two boys of Team 7 met at the main gate just 10 minutes after leaving the Hokage Tower. Knowing they'd be waiting for Sakura for at least another 10 minutes and for Kakashi the entire rest of the hour if not more, the two sat with their backs to the guard station, doing elemental manipulation training, and occasionally exchanging quips with Kotetsu and Izumo, who happened to be on guard duty that afternoon. After Sakura's timely arrival, the boys stopped their training to go over their plans with her. Not wanting Kakashi to overhear their discussion over the earring link, or for the gate guards to catch parts of their plans, they took to having the conversation using a sign language invented during the Fourth Hidden Shinobi World War and a completely innocuous complaining session about D-ranks and over-entitled clients out loud. Finally, 56 minutes later, Kakashi arrived at the gate with a now mostly sober Tazuna, and they finally set out. The three not genin automatically assumed a standard escort formation, which surprised Kakashi because he'd never taught it. But he waved away the thought as he took rear. Naruto took point because he had the best trained senses, chakra and otherwise. Sakura and Sasuke took flank, allowing them to react quickly to any signals Naruto might give them. All three kept their guard up, vaguely remembering encountering a couple of Chunin before meeting Zabuza. Despite their high guard, Naruto and Sakura kept Tazuna distracted with inane conversation as he drank progressively more sake while they traveled, trying to keep the bridge builder from catching on to their wariness. Even Sasuke and Kakashi offered a few words here and there. Kakashi wasn't a jounin for nothing though, and quickly noticed how prepared for high-level combat his students were. Idly, he wondered what made his three genin so tense about this mission, knowing his students were aware that a C rank shouldn't involve combat with enemy shinobi. So, when an hour and a half later the group passed a suspicious-looking puddle, the older shinobi wanted to know what his students did that he obviously didn't. Kakashi sighed, preparing for battle. He knew he was going to have a talk with both the client and his kids. Hostiles coming from the rear, prepared to engage enemy shinobi, came over the earring link from Naruto, just before Kakashi could broadcast a similar message. Battle code 2C sway, engage with caution and avoid blades. The smell of their poison burns my nose from here. Kakashi's uncovered eye blinked, catching the A and BU code indicating their opponents were two Chunin-level shinobi, both with a water affinity. Deciding he'd have time to be surprised later, the copy Nin responded to his blonde student's message with more A and BU code. Battle code Kanahigakur 1 Hidari/Minami, Mijai Kabe, Hokuto. Go! The message came across the link just as the bladed chain wrapped around the jounin. Swiftly following orders, Sasuke moved to the rear to cover Kakashi's abandoned position and Sakura went to guard the client. Naruto created a clone to help Sakura guard Tazuna and attacked one of the two Chunin, managing to separate him from his partner who was busy with Sasuke. Aware of but ignoring the other fight, Naruto quickly closed the gap between himself and his opponent. Getting within the opposing ninja's guard, the blonde managed to get a sedative paralytic seal on the exposed skin between his opponent's cloak and gauntlet, causing the now identified Kirigakure nuke Nin to drop like a puppet with severed strings. Noticing Sasuke's battle end, Naruto tied up his live, but comatose adversary with high-grade ninja wire, and dragged him over to where Sasuke was hog-tying his own downed opponent with a bit of vicious satisfaction. Sakura and Tazuna approached the boys, respectively cautious and drunken, as Kakashi jumped down from the tree from where he'd been observing. The jounin took one look at Tazuna, spearing him with a single-eyed glare and a decent dose of killing intent, ready to get the real story from him in any manner necessary, but quickly changed his mind when he noticed that the super bridge builder was so drunk he was nearly unconscious. Realizing he'd get more coherent information from both the captured Nin and his students than the client, he turned to where Naruto and Sakura were observing Sasuke, who was extracting information from their captives via Sharingan-induced genjutsu. So, are you three going to tell me what you know that I don't? Kakashi asked, not letting his annoyance at being left out of the loop appear in his voice or countenance. The trio of genin, however, wasn't oblivious to his irritation and decided to get it over with. Sakura spoke first. When we got assigned the mission, we decided to do a little information gathering. Why would a bridge builder be so drunk in the middle of day knowing he was hiring a shinobi escort? It's common knowledge even in villages where there is very little shinobi contact that even the most useless of academy graduates is more than a match for any highway bandit. Kakashi nodded, indicating they should keep explaining. Naruto, sparing the typically less than verbose Uchiha the burden of speaking, continued, "Because I'm me." Naruto gestured loosely toward his stomach. "I usually have anywhere from 5 to 20 reinforced Kage Bunshin and Henge around Konoha listening for information that could be useful. Then ensuring the safety and well-being of myself and my precious people was unspoken but understood nonetheless. I usually dispel and replace them once a day. About 2 months ago I caught wind of a bridge being built from the island nation of Nami no Kuni to reach mainland on the coast of Hai no Kuni. As Nami's economy is primarily centered on shipping, fishing and ocean-based industries, I was understandably curious as to why they would open their county to land-based trading after so long." After a little, Naruto cleared his throat. Investigation. Kakashi inwardly translated this to spying on people and being in places he shouldn't be. "I found out that Gato of Gato Shipping and Transport had moved his base of operation to Wave." Naruto stopped and looked at his Jounin sensei, as if this should mean something to him. Kakashi just narrowed his eye at the blonde and prompted him with a mildly aggravated and. The blue-eyed boy sighed. "Sensei, Gato may look like a legitimate businessman on the outside, but most of the illegal drug and human trafficking in Hai no Kuni and smaller surrounding countries is facilitated by his company under alias using hired thugs, bandits, and sometimes nukenin." Kakashi's eye widened. "Gato has more than likely bought out most if not all of the business in Nami, and is probably imposing taxes on the people of the country, and enforcing his will with hired muscle. Tazuna's bridge is a danger to his monopoly on Wave Country's economy," Naruto said as Kakashi finally picked up on what the blonde was hinting. "If Tazuna's bridge gets finished, it would open up Nami no Kuni to outside authorities such as the daimyo of Fire Country or Konoha. An authority that has the manpower to shut down his operation completely. The only way to stop it would be either to destroy the bridge, or prevent it from being built at all." The silver-haired shinobi finished. "Exactly. You three knew this probably wouldn't turn out to be a C rank, didn't you?" Yeah. HN? "Yes, sensei." Kakashi rubbed his hand through his hair and glared at Tazuna, who had sobered up enough to be shaking in his proverbial boots, hoping that the angry Jounin wouldn't just snap and kill him. "You are damn lucky my genin are much better prepared for shinobi combat than any other 2-month-old genin team," Kakashi said to the terrified bridge builder. "Sasuke, what did you find out from our captives?" "They're idiots." "Sasuke?" HN. "The dimwits I named are Gozu and Meizu, known as the Oni Kyudai or Demon Brothers in the Bingo book. Known accomplices of Momochi Zabuza the Kirigakyu no Kijin. They work for Gato. Their objective was to off the drunkard. They don't know whether Gato has hired anyone other than them, and for some reason the morons thought hiding in a puddle on a sunny day when it hasn't rained for nearly 2 weeks was a good idea." Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura all felt a little bit of pity for the two, but couldn't help agreeing with Sasuke's opinion of the siblings' intelligence. After Kakashi sent off a message to Konoha asking for a prisoner collection team to come collect the newly dubbed Moron brothers, Tazuna finally collected his balls and plied Kakashi with his sob story. Deciding they would continue the mission, they once again set off in the direction of Nami no Kuni. It was nearing noon the next day when they finally reached the coast. Tazuna had arranged a boat to get them to Nami, and they all climbed in grateful for the opportunity to rest before reaching the island nation. Team 7 goggled at the unfinished bridge as they passed under it into the reedy wetlands that bordered the coast, even if Sakura was the only one to vocalize her appreciation of the giant work of architecture. Going ashore, Tazuna thanked the boatman, and the group of shinobi and one civilian continued toward the bridge builder's house. 45 minutes into their journey toward Tazuna's home, Naruto indicated there were 2 approaching chakra signatures coming from the east. The 2 signatures followed them for nearly a half hour before there was a noticeable rustling in the bushes. Sasuke indulged the pursuers by tossing a couple shuriken toward the noise, revealing a white rabbit. Sasuke picked up the hare by its scruff, holding it at eye level. "HN, dinner," was all raven-haired boy said before Kakashi yelled for everyone to duck as he pulled the bridge builder down with him. Rather than ducking, his 3 students jumped over the whirling blade, landing with kunai drawn ready for battle. The white bunny scampered into the underbrush after its release. Kakashi stood eyeing the blade that had buried itself in a tree on the side of the path, and the man standing on the handle. Momochi Zabuza perched on the handle of his Kubikuribuchu, watching the cluster of people below him. The 3 young ninja had arranged themselves in a defensive configuration around his target, and the recognizable form of Sharingan no Kakashi stood in front of the little assembly in a protective stance. "You appear to be Sharingan no Kakashi," he paused before continuing. "Too bad, but the bridge builder's mine." "I'm sorry, but I can't let you have him," the silver-haired ninja said as he pulled up his hitate, exposing the implanted Sharingan in his left eye. He's paying me to keep him alive, after all. Tazuna shivered, knowing if this weren't a mission Kakashi probably would have killed him himself. Naruto, Sakura and Sasuke were arranged around the bridge builder at all angles to make sure at least one of them would notice and react to whatever danger there was to the client until the others could come to support him. As Kakashi and Zabuza bantered, the three younger shinobi were exchanging information with their squad captain via earring. Indicating their readiness, Kakashi told them he thought Zabuza would come for him first as the ex-Kiri Nin began to generate the vision-impairing mist he was known for. I doubt it, Kakashi-sensei, came from Sakura. You're not his target, the client is, was Naruto's slightly sarcastic reply as the Jounin heard the whistle of a blade approaching the client, and a splash of water coming from the puddle that used to be a water clone of Zabuza that Naruto had just killed. Stop trying to see in the mist, Baka-sensei. Close your damn Sharingan and use your nose. If I can track him that way, so can you, stupid dog summoner, was relayed by Naruto, who was fighting against another Mizu Bunshin with two of his own shadow clones taking up positions to help Sakura and Sasuke if necessary. Taking Naruto's advice and ignoring the attitude, Kakashi recovered his Sharingan and tracked Zabuza through the mist with his heightened sense of smell. Finding his opponent nearing the client from Sasuke's side, he made his way quickly to intercept the A-rank missing Nin. The rest of the fight was annoyingly similar to the first time the three genin went through it. Although there was much less talking involved and they managed to free Kakashi a lot quicker, the fight still ended with Haku posing as an Onin and making off with Zabuza just before Kakashi passed out from chakra exhaustion. I may love this man, but sometimes I can't help but wonder if he needs to grow a brain, Naruto thought as he hauled the unconscious form of the deceptively slender Jounin toward Tazuna's house. He ignored Kurama's sleepy chuckles echoing in the back of his mind. They arrived at Tazuna's house in good time. The three genin met Tsunami, the drunken bridge builder's daughter, and quickly got situated in the client's house. The blonde ninja sent out 5 Kage Bunshin to set a seal perimeter around the property that would alert him to any chakra signature, ninja or civilian, in a 25-meter radius around the property line, which included any who may try to approach from the water lining the dock on the old man's property. Sasuke and Sakura, knowing Naruto missed being close to Kakashi, went to help keep watch. This left the original Naruto sitting at Kakashi's side in Tazuna's spare room watching over his sensei and lamenting the fact that he had to be 12 again. The problem with acting as a 12-year-old was that he still had his 20-year-old body and 20-year-old hormones. And his lover, who wasn't his lover yet, who was no longer 14 years older than him, just 6, was lying practically defenseless before him. Gah! He rubbed his hands roughly through his hair, causing his already messy spikes to fall into more disarray. The blue-eyed shinobi decided to distract himself by reviewing the battle with Zabuza. After taking Naruto's advice, Kakashi had easily tracked Zabuza through the mist. Relying on his genin team to distract the Mizu Bunshin, Kirigakure's demon had kept spawning to take out the bridge builder, while the silver-haired shinobi took care of the original. When he managed to get Zabuza out of the radius of the mist, the former Kirinin decided to let the jutsu go as it was just a drain on his chakra. As the mist dissipated, Kakashi once again brought out his Sharingan, his sight no longer impeded by the blinding fog. The fight was going pretty well in Kakashi's favor until Zabuza was able to unbalance Kakashi and cause him to take refuge in the water. Kakashi's eyes widened. What's this? The water's heavy, oh shit. Suiton, Sura no Jutsu. The water is my domain, copycat. Zabuza gloated, holding Kakashi captive in the large sphere of chakra-infused water. God damn it, sensei! Came Sakura's voice from where the mist was dissipating around the bridge builder. Why'd you have to go and get yourself caught? Now we have to deal with the Chigurigakure no Kijin on our own. Don't be stupid. Run! Kakashi shouted over the earring link as to not use up his air. Don't be stupid, he says, it was Sasuke, HN. For those who don't speak Uchiha, I'll translate, said Naruto, knowing Kakashi deserved the sarcasm that Sasuke's tone and body language implied that only he and Sakura had enough experience to read. What he said was, quote, if we run, he'll kill you, then come after us, dumbass. End quote. Now we could probably manage to take out the eyebrowless wonder over there, Naruto pointed at Zabuza, whose eye twitched at the moniker the blonde had slapped on him. But we wouldn't be able to protect the drunkard at the same time, therefore failing the mission. Or we could protect the drunkard and take out missing brows. Sakura giggled and Sasuke snickered at Naruto's new nicknames for Zabuza, but lose our lives in the process, again failing the mission because Gato would inevitably send another assassin. Or we could free you, at least force the guy who wields a giant kitchen knife and calls it a sword to retreat, and live to see another day while protecting the client. Zabuza's eye was developing a tic as Naruto came up with more and more ridiculous names, but was loath to let Kakashi of the Sharingan go just to decapitate the blonde menace. Oh? Zabuza said. You three little tree huggers think you can take me out? Me, the demon of the bloody mist? You are way out of your league, brats. When I was your age, my hands were already drenched in blood, having tack. Yeah. He was interrupted by Sakura, who waved her hand as if brushing his words out of the air. Bloody misty watery demon thingy. Blood of nearly 100 academy students. Blah blah blah, get on with it. We're not here to talk. Sakura tugged at her gloves to demonstrate her point. Are you brats out of your minds? Why are you baiting an A-rank Nin? Hey! Pay attention! Kakashi's words came over the earring link frantically, but all three of his students ignored him. Ha! You brats might have some potential after all. Very well, Zabuza laughed as he sent out 5 Mizu Bunshin to attack the genin surrounding the bridge builder. Go, Sakura, said Naruto, taking command. He and Sasuke took defensive positions in front of the client as Sakura ran straight at the Bunshin, raising her fist. Shinaro! Was Sakura's war cry as she punched the ground. Zabuza laughed louder until he heard the rumbling and cracking of the earth, and he looked up. Seeing a crater nearly 3 meters wide where the ground had fractured and 5 wet spots where the earth had absorbed the water of his disrupted Bunshin. Zabuza felt a drop of nervous sweat begin to roll down his forehead to be absorbed by the bandages hiding the lower half of his visage. Carefully, he eyed the pink-haired Kunoichi who was standing on a raised section of broken earth, smirking and tugging on her gloves. While Zabuza was distracted by Sakura, Naruto and Sasuke conferred about the best way to free Kakashi. Finally, they decided to depend on Sasuke's shurikenjutsu skills as they did the first time. Naruto handed Sasuke a second Demon Wind Shuriken with which he would Kawarimi after Zabuza allowed it behind him. Sasuke threw the shuriken, concealing the second in the shadow of the first. Zabuza grabbed the first shuriken out of the air with his free hand, and began to gloat before noticing the second, which he avoided by jumping, allowing Naruto to get behind him. The blonde aimed a brace of kunai at the arm Zabuza was holding Kakashi with, before landing on the water. The demon of the mist couldn't avoid the kunai without releasing Kakashi, so, release Kakashi he did. Naruto Kawarimi'd with a piece of broken earth near Sakura to get out of the range of the high-level ninjutsu battle. Kakashi started once he was released, hypnotizing Zabuza with his Sharingan as the two of them exchanged battle banter. The Jinchuriki was annoyed. Kakashi hadn't closed his Sharingan eye or covered it while he was in the water prison, allowing it to continue draining his chakra. The ex-Ambiyu couldn't have used a lightning jutsu to electrify the water and force Zabuza to release him. No, he just had to keep his chakra draining by using Obito's eye unnecessarily, and now here he was wasting time exchanging banter and high-level, chakra-draining jutsu instead of just getting the freaking job done. Naruto was almost relieved when Haku showed up and took away Zabuza. Kakashi barely made it to land before passing out from chakra exhaustion. The blonde had shook his head, knowing he would be the one to haul his future lover to Tazuna's house. Bringing himself back to reality, Naruto noticed Kakashi's breath quicken and his eyes begin to move more quickly beneath their lids. Knowing his sensei was about to wake, Naruto moved backward just in visual range of the silver-haired man as not to startle him by being too close, or by moving into his line of sight too quickly. Kakashi's eyes snapped open, moving between sleep and wakefulness with a swiftness only seen in trained warriors as he was. Noticing Naruto at his side, he took a glance around the room, cataloging his position and all the potential escape routes. Realizing his blonde student was in the perfect position to defend him from an attack from any corner of the small room, the Jounin relaxed somewhat and began to do an internal check of his injuries. Morning or afternoon, sensei, Naruto said with a small smile. Naruto, Kakashi returned the greeting. We're at Tazuna's house, in the guest room. All 4 of us will have to share, but it should only be 3 of us at a time due to watch shifts. The blonde began to explain the lay of the land to the Jounin. I had some clones set a seal perimeter, and Sasuke and Sakura are patrolling right now. You have some minor chakra exhaustion which was exacerbated by the oxygen deprivation caused by Zabuza's Sura no Jutsu. Sakura treated the oxygen deprivation, but there's not much she could do about the chakra exhaustion except have me give you small chakra infusions every hour. You should be up and running in full health in 2 days or so, rather than the usual week. Kakashi nodded as well as he could to show he understood everything as well as to indicate Naruto should continue. Sasuke, Sakura and I have come to the conclusion that Zabuza is still alive and is recovering from the battle with the help of his little hunter Nin imposter. I knew something was off with the end of the battle, but I'm glad you guys figured it out fast. What do you think we should do about it? Naruto was startled that Kakashi was asking his opinion. He wasn't sure how to word what he wanted to say next. The Jounin, seeing Naruto's confusion, decided to explain a little. Naruto, you seem to have taken the position of team captain while I was out. You also seem to be doing an admirable job, If I were still out for the count, I'm sure you had a plan of action. Why don't you share it with me, HM? Kakashi I smiled at him. Naruto rubbed the back of his head sheepishly and smiled. Ah, well, the three of us discussed the next course of action while you were out, and we decided the best way to go about protecting Tazuna was to be proactive about it. Even if we kill Zabuza and his fake hunter, Gato will hire another high-level nin to take Tazuna out of the picture, or even turn the bridge into a tollway once it's complete. The best way to fix the situation is to take Gato out of the picture entirely. Once Gato is gone, Zabuza will no longer have a reason to fight us, and the bridge builder will be safe. If you weren't up in another day, we were going to leave a group of Kage Bunshin to guard the perimeter and sneak into Gato's hideout, preferably kill the little shit in the most expedient way possible before gathering information on his operations as well as the money he's been siphoning from the people of Nami. Oh, and take compensation for Zabuza to keep him from coming after us for killing his paycheck. Next, we'd put the fear of God into the thugs with a little bit of trickery to keep them from ransacking the town. Then Tazuna would finish the bridge, and we'd be free to go. I already have SEAL reinforced Kage Bunshin in Gato's base hinged as random thugs, small rodents and insects to gather information, that's it. Kakashi was practically speechless. It was a well-planned infiltration/espionage and assassination mission rolled into one, with a little bit of misinformation and sabotage thrown in for garnish. The older man blinked, remaining silent. The blonde squirmed in discomfort at the lack of response from the Jounin. Were they too ambitious? Would he approve? Well, okay. Naruto blinked, startled. He hadn't really expected Kakashi to approve. Really? The blonde grinned. Really. But you're going to wait until I'm at full mobility, and I will be doing the assassinating. You three will be collecting documents and money as well as distracting the thugs and bandits. Got it? Naruto nodded, just happy that Kakashi had accepted of his plan. He hadn't been sure that the XNB would allow it. They had backup plans, but this was really the most solid. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei. There was a call from Tsunami at the bottom of the stairs letting the two know that dinner was ready. You're welcome. Now why don't you come help me get down the stairs for dinner? Naruto laughed, and did as requested. Halfway across the elemental nations from Team 7, Uchiha Itachi was perched in a tree on the outskirts of Aim no Kuni, near Kusa no Kuni's border. In his hand was a missive penned by the Sandaime Hokage, requesting that Itachi return to Konoha for a briefing when he had a chance. The long-haired ninja was quick to realize the briefing he was called for was related to his seemingly inexplicable acquisition of nearly 8 years of memories of a future that hadn't happened. The missive had not only come mere days after their appearance, but also had some veiled references to the Sharingan and Fuinjutsu. Waking up with years of extra memories was an odd experience, the Uchiha decided, as he contemplated how to ditch his partner between their current location and the border of Hai no Kuni. At first he'd wondered if it was some type of genjutsu technique that was messing with his head, but quickly discarded the idea when activating his Dijitsu did nothing but make the memories clearer. His thoughts turned to Sasuke as he dropped from his perch, landing with nary a whisper. Clearly hindsight is 20/20, because 8 years of war-torn future put into perspective what the last 4 hadn't. Hate was not a suitable motivator. He hoped fervently that Sasuke had someone to ground him, to keep him sane, someone to prevent him from making the same mistakes he had in Itachi's new memories. Sighing and wordlessly indicating Kisame, his Akatsuki-assigned partner, should follow, Itachi started making tracks into grass country. The 18-year-old decided to lose his partner somewhere between Kusagakure and Takigakure, then loop back to Konoha for his meeting with the Hokage. Doing so would take a few extra days, but the Hokage had only specified that he wanted the meeting to happen before the Chunin exams. In Nami no Kuni, Kakashi was feeling quite a bit better than he expected to be just 2 days after a case of minor chakra exhaustion. He was currently on the bridge supervising around 150 Naruto clones working as cheap labor for Tazuna while he and the original kept an eye on the old bridge builder sort of. Kakashi was leaning against one of the concrete sides of the bridge, with his single eye trained on his Ika, occasionally looking up to survey the area. Naruto, on the other hand, was sitting on the ground not far from the Jounin's feet, fiddling with a seal Kakashi couldn't decipher if he tried, which he did, causing him to wonder how much Naruto really knew about sealing, and replacing his Kage Bunshin as they popped periodically from accidental knocks, bumps and dispelling for the purpose of spreading new knowledge. It wasn't as if Naruto didn't have the chakra to spare, after all. Sasuke and Sakura were left at the drunkard's house to guard his daughter and grandson as well as sleep in shifts, not that they really needed it, but Kakashi didn't know that, to make sure they were fully awake for their assault on Gato's base of operations. The attack was planned for the break of dawn the next morning. Kakashi, having been a Jounin for around 13 years and an ANBU for half of those, was completely capable of working in top form without adequate sleep. And Naruto, whose stamina was practically endless, had no trouble going days without sleep thanks to his tenant. The workday finished around 5:30 to give the workers time to get home for dinner with their families. Making their way back toward Tazuna's house, Naruto and Kakashi found themselves disgusted by the state of the town. There were groups of homeless begging on corners. Young children were seen huddling in groups of 4 or 5, looking hungry and desperate. Kakashi watched Naruto as the blonde's face twisted into a sad sort of grimace while he took in the drawn features on their faces and the unhealthy skinniness of their bodies that could only be caused by malnourishment. Kakashi couldn't help but wonder if the blonde was remembering his own younger days. The Jounin knew from talks with both the Hokage and Irika, with a few passing comments from Naruto himself, that the usually effervescent blonde had lived on the streets for a while before being moved into his own apartment. And even then, he had practically been living on instant ramen because it was cheap and didn't spoil easily, causing the blonde some malnutrition of his own. The silver-haired shinobi had noticed Naruto's height increase almost 2.5 inches over the few months they'd been a team, and had realized after some discreet, informal investigation, subtle spying, that it hadn't been caused by the onset of puberty, but rather by the fact that he was now getting a higher ratio of nutrients to calories in his diet thanks to being dragged to either Sakura or Sasuke's place most nights to either cook for or eat with them. What Kakashi didn't know was that Naruto had been subtly adjusting his henge to afford the growth he should have had with the increase in nutrients, according to Kurama. As he'd not really adjusted his diet until several months into his training trip with Jiraiya the first time, he hadn't grown nearly so much originally, eventually gaining the height due to the healing factor of his Uzumaki heritage once his eating habits had changed. Not that it really changed things that much, but eating healthfully could only do him good. That and Sakura wouldn't allow him to go back to his 90% ramen diet just for authenticity. The pink-haired girl had nearly lobotomized him when he'd, mostly, jokingly suggested the idea. Naruto had managed to smooth his expression by the time they reached Tazuna's house, but Kakashi could still see the tension in his student's jaw, neck and shoulders. Hustling the bridge builder inside, Kakashi saw Sakura setting the table and could feel Sasuke's chakra signature emanating from the roof where he sat watch. The cycloptic shinobi called Sasuke down from the roof for dinner via earring in a display of laziness that caused Naruto quirk an eyebrow in amusement, and Sakura to spare the older man a look of exasperated fondness. It was mid-meal when Inari, the bridge builder's grandson, finally gave voice to the ire that had been building in him the last few days. Interrupting the conversation about the work on the bridge that day, the boy stood and slammed his hands on the table. "Why do you guys bother to try so hard? No matter how much you train, you'll still be no match for Gato's men. No matter what kind of claims you make, or how hard you work, when facing the strong, the weak will only end up dead." By the end of his outburst, the boy had tears running down his face. The rest of the table was shocked. The 3 genin had expected this, but were still unready for the vehemence with which the child voiced his despair. Naruto knew what he had to do. Giving the boy a bland glance, the blonde showed no sympathy. "Whatever, I'm not like you." Kakashi looked at Naruto in shock. He knew Naruto would hold no sympathy for the kid, but thought that his blue-eyed student would be gentler, aware that the blonde was usually good with children. He almost made a move to stop the blonde from saying anything else, but the sharp looks thrown at him by his other students, along with an almost command over the earring from the blonde to let him deal with it, halted the Jounin. "I'd hate to be like you," Inari practically wailed, tears flying. "You don't know anything about this country, yet you're butting into our business. What the hell do you know about me?" There was a gasp of Inari. Language? From Tsunami, but it couldn't stop the raging tide of vitriol coming from her son. "What the hell do you know about suffering? I'm glad I'm different from you. You're always so cheerful and happy, you don't know how hard life can be." The end of the tirade came at an almost painful decibel level. "So you lost your dad, and your country's poor. Gato's a bastard. Uh-huh. And this allows you to wallow in your pain and cry all day, posing as the star in your own little tragedy." Naruto said this calmly, watching Inari with sad eyes which were glazed with icy rage. "Have you been to town in the last couple of months?" Inari looked at Naruto with incredulity in his eyes, but shook his head no. "Then you haven't seen the groups of orphans starving in the streets, begging and digging in the trash for what little food they can find. You still have your mom and your grandfather." Naruto gestured at Tsunami and Tazuna. "You still have people who are precious to you. Do you have food on the table every day?" Inari bit his lip and nodded, tears still trickling down his face. "Do you have a roof over your head to sleep under every night?" The boy nodded again. "Then you know nothing of true suffering," the blonde concluded. The child stared at Naruto with wide eyes. Naruto made eye contact, then looked down at his hands. "When you have nothing and no one, not a place to go, someone to see or something to do, when you have no reason to continue existing, then you will understand true suffering." The blonde looked straight at Inari. But when you have people to cherish, things to enjoy, life to live, Naruto clenched his fists, you protect those people, those things, with your own 2 hands. Then you will be truly strong. Your blade is only as sharp as your will to protect is strong, and your will to protect is only as strong as the love in your heart. Whether it be the love of your home, the love of your family, the love for your friends, or the love reserved for a lover, it really doesn't matter. Naruto said with finality. What Gato has is not strength, but money. And while money begets action in this world, Gato has no true strength and his goons are only strong as long as he keeps the money flowing. Inari looked at Naruto contemplatively. Then the blonde's face took the shape of a vicious grin. But when you cut the head off the monster under your bed, not only does its blood stop flowing, the body stops moving too. Naruto got up, leaving his dinner unfinished on the table, and walked out the front door. It was nearly midnight when Sakura and Sasuke found Naruto meditating in the forest. The dark-haired shinobi leaned up against his blonde brother's back, letting his head fall onto Naruto's left shoulder. Sakura took her place on Naruto's right side, holding his right hand in both of hers. 15 minutes later, Naruto came gradually out of his meditative trance. Noticing his teammate's presence, he allowed himself to relax into Sasuke's back, their weight balancing each other to keep them upright. Naruto, couldn't you have used a better metaphor than the monster under the bed? It was kind of gruesome. I think you may have scarred the kid for life, Sakura said, kind of destroying the familial moment the 3 of them had created. Sasuke sorted in derision and Naruto let out a bark of laughter before grinning at the pinkette. Yeah, I had one about a river that went something like, when you dam a river, not only does the water stop flowing, the fish stop their journey too, but I thought the kid needed something a bit more shocking to bring him back from pity, the kid with the tragic backstory, world, population, me and my ego. Sasuke snickered silently, but Naruto could feel the vibration of his teammate's body against his back. About the rest of your little speech though, it was very moving, Sakura continued. It was almost as good as the one you made when they made you Supreme Commander of the Allied Shinobi Forces. She smiled at him. That was the best speech I think I've ever heard out of you, and you're really good at giving motivational speeches. It was also the first time you were quoted saying your blade is only as sharp as your will to protect is strong, and your will to protect is only as strong as the love in your heart. You know how all the Hokage have quotes under their pictures in the Hokage Tower? That one was going to be under yours before the village was raised. I'd better thank Haku again then, Naruto said with a grin, looking at Sakura. Why? Sasuke questioned from behind him, confused at what seemed to be a total non sequitur. Because he told me once, actually just yesterday morning, when a person has something important to protect, that's when they become truly strong. When I was actually 12, he was the catalyst that changed my entire outlook on strength and being a ninja. Sasuke and Sakura looked at each other and blinked in amazement. I really want to keep this guy alive now, Sasuke said. If he can make that much impact on you, he really must be something. He really is, the blonde smiled, remembering the battle on the bridge that took place the first time. He told me once before he died last time, if we had met in another time and place we could have been good friends. I think I want this to be that time and place. Both Sakura and Sasuke wore small smiles and leaned into the blonde, while Naruto rested his head on Sasuke's left shoulder. They stayed together under the stars for another half an hour or so, speaking quietly every so often, until they decided it was time to go meet Kakashi to prepare for their raid on Gato's hideout. The operation was going smoothly, Kakashi thought. But he didn't voice his feelings even over the earring link, knowing that if he did so he'd probably jinx it. The Jounin was hidden under the cover of a light genjutsu that camouflaged the area where he was crouched on the ceiling of Gato's office. It was surprisingly easy to infiltrate the hideout. Most of the guards were too drunk to be effective, and their idiot employer didn't even have the foresight to lock his windows. Everyone knows that closed doors, especially locked ones, offend a ninja's sense of pride, and most refuse to use them for just that reason, don't they? Kakashi frowned under his mask. What with the way the Sandame always complains about no one using the door, maybe it wasn't as obvious as he thought. Bringing himself back to the task at hand and ignoring the chatter of his students over the earring channel, Kakashi carefully made the hand signs for a small lightning jutsu which would cause the target's heart to stutter and fail. Imitating a heart attack was the best way to assassinate someone without incriminating evidence, and as the electricity was generated by chakra, there wouldn't even be a burn mark indicating the point where the target was struck. Kakashi silently crept his way closer to the diminutive executive. On the other side of the base, Naruto, Sasuke and Sakura made their way through Gato's vaults, taking everything of importance that they found. Documents such as deeds, payrolls, or contracts with his goons, Nukenin and Yakuza, money, storage scrolls, and the occasional valuable gemstone or piece of jewelry were all on their list as they completely ransacked the vault room. They did it silently, but not without a lot comments on their finds over the earring link. While they collected the money and documents, the reinforced clones Naruto had in the base were playing a mean-spirited prank on the bandits, and Ronin that worked for Gato. Using few injustice-based illusions, the clones were making rounds acting as vengeful spirits of the dead, killed or otherwise. Citizens of Wave Country come to haunt them over their past misdeeds toward the innocent populace. Finally, having gathered everything into storage scrolls and having gotten the word from Kakashi that Gato was dead, they all took leave of the base, letting a few clones stay behind to make sure that the hired thugs wouldn't make trouble when they found their boss dead. As he left, Kakashi caught sight of what Naruto's clones were doing to the bandit station before the hideout. He had to stifle his laughter as to not give himself away while he watched one of the clones chase after a bandit seemingly floating on air while carrying a bloody pitchfork. "Is it Oban already, Naruto?" Kakashi asked his blonde student, his mental snickers carrying over the broadcast as well. "Apparently it's come early here this year, Kakashi-sensei. They used the lunar calendar," Naruto responded, sending all of his teammates into bouts of silent hilarity. When they finally reached an area that was far enough away from the base that they wouldn't be heard, their silent hysterics turned into full-blown audible fits of laughter, collapsing in a pile of amused shinobi not caring a bit that they were a misshapen lump of awkward, which only caused them to laugh harder while riding on the high of a well-completed covert operation. When the group of shinobi had finally exhausted their hilarity, Kakashi attempted to extricate himself from the distorted pile of limbs that were his genin. He didn't get very far before he was upended by Naruto's arm and Sakura's leg. Taking a look at the way his team was intertwined, he wondered how they all managed to get so knotted together, himself included. Sakura, do you think you could unwrap your leg from mine? And Naruto, will you please unhook your arm from around my ankle? Kakashi asked with laughter in his voice. Sure, sensei. On it, sensei, came the replies from Sakura and Naruto respectively. While you're doing that, Sasuke, if you disentangle your arm from around Sakura's other leg, you might be able to get it out from under Naruto. That way Naruto may be able to separate himself from the ground, Sakura's arm and your legs. HN, was the only response Sasuke made. However, he hoped that the light flush on his cheeks wasn't visible in the low light of the moon. It was only about 0445 hours and the sun was beginning to rise as the ninja of Squad 7 made their way back to the bridge builder's house for the few hours of rest they would be able to catch before heading to the bridge with Tazuna. Leaving a couple of Naruto's Kage Bunshin and one of Kakashi's to run patrol while they slept, they all crammed into the cramped guest room their client had given them to use and quickly drifted to sleep. 2.5 years into the 4th grade, Hidden Shinobi World War Team 7 shared a campsite close to headquarters. Kakashi and Naruto were now on rest rotation, while Sakura took a shift at the field hospital and Sasuke conferred with Shikamaru and the rest of the strategy team. Now 18 years old, Naruto had matured remarkably over the last 2 years of war. Every waking moment not spent fighting on the front line or sleeping was spent training until exhaustion. For the first year of his training, time was divided between learning Tantujutsu from Kakashi and Fuinjutsu from the Edo Tensei of his father, the Yandame Hokage, Namikaze Minato. It was also during that period when Naruto's hormones finally started getting the better of him. Jiraiya would have been mortified had he been alive, but Minato thought it was hilarious as all get out when his son, trained by the great, 100% straight, Toad Sennin as he was, began to crush on Kakashi. It led to innumerable bouts of teasing followed by fatherly advice and sparring sessions to relieve stress after said fatherly advice was processed. Minato had once told Naruto that Kushina would have found it just as amusing as her husband did once she got over the fact that she'd most likely never get grandchildren. At this, Naruto protested weakly but truthfully that such a scenario wasn't necessarily the case, as he was really an equal opportunity believer when it came to the gender of his partner. Minato glanced at him sideways when he'd said that, and then cut his gaze quickly to Kakashi, who was lounging on the other side of the field, nose in his Aika, just out of earshot, and then back at Naruto before raising a blonde eyebrow in an unspoken question. Naruto blushed red enough that he resembled Sasuke's favorite fruit, before he explained, "It isn't like I'm attracted to Kakashi-sensei cause he's male, and a really good-looking male at that," was mumbled so low that Minato barely caught the words before his son cleared his throat to continue, the red in the younger blonde's face receding a bit. "The fact that he's got a dick has nothing to do with it really, because I was attracted to Sakura-chan for a really long time before she became more of a sister to me than anything." Minato broke in, "I can see that, she's pretty similar to Kushina, exotic hair, violent temper, strong, a good teammate." Naruto laughed, "You know, when she graduated the academy she was only the first 2 on your list, preceded by the heading major fangirl, and a fangirl for Sasuke at that, and it stayed that way for around a year and a half after we graduated." The elder blonde looked at his son like he'd lost his mind. "How about we go back to talking about Kakashi," he said, not wanting to step on the landmine that talking about Sakura seemed to be. "Kakashi, it's because, well, part of it is that he's good looking," Naruto admitted, but steamrollered on, "It's mostly because of what he's done for me, how he treats me, as a human and a person with feelings. It's not just that anymore either, because I have other people, precious people, who treat me that way too. It's that he listens to me when I ramble on and on about ramen, or that technique I learned last week to bail. And even when he has his nose shoved in his Ika, I know that he's caught every word, because even if it's not right away, maybe even a week or two later he'll ask me a question or make some sort of comment about something that I said in that conversation, when anyone else would have tuned me out data bail. Even as important a friend as Gai-sensei is to him, Kakashi-sensei is constantly tuning him out. It's really not just acting hip and cool most of the time. Sensei just doesn't really care until the situation requires him to. Also, during training he doesn't make fun of me or tease me when I don't understand something right away, like Ero-senin used to, even if he explained in more detail afterward. Kakashi will try to explain using a simile or just demonstrate, because he knows I learn better hands-on. He doesn't mind or even seem to feel put upon that I don't learn like most people, and as much as they try, Irika-sensei and Ero-senin weren't really able to hide their frustration with the way I process things. He was there for me when I was put on his team. As much as Sasuke or Sakura will say that he trained Sasuke more than me or Sakura, he was actually softer on Sasuke than he was on either of us. And as much as I hated it, he made sure that I had fresh fruit and vegetables in my diet after he found out that I was eating primarily ramen. Even when he pushed me off on that closet pervert ebisu for the month preparation before the third test in the Chunin exams, he directed us toward the onsen as a good place to practice, only for me to find out later that he was well aware that Rhea was in town, and if he was in town he'd be at the hot springs, and with my luck I'd manage to weasel some training out of him. Naruto sighed. And as much as Kakashi doesn't do emotions well, he's always there to point me in the right direction when I need it, more than as a sensei, like a friend, an equal. Even Sakura and Sasuke aren't quite able to do that for me all the time. Naruto continued on, while carefully avoiding listing physical attributes, much to Minato's amusement. Several similar conversations ranging from how to catch the Copynin's attention, to the ever-embarrassing sex talk, which Naruto quickly aborted by saying that despite Ero-senin's status as straight as the trajectory of Tsunade's fist to his face, which was pretty damn straight, the man had made sure Naruto was well educated, which caused the yandere to burst into uncontrollable laughter for several minutes between the pained look on his son's face and what he could imagine caused such a look. It was 6 months after the Edo Tensei that Orochimaru had performed to bring back the past Hokage had been ended, due to a genjutsu performed by Obito on the snake-like Nin before his death, when the point of all the conversations really came to a head. Apparently Kakashi had also been watching Naruto, slowly developing less than platonic feelings. According to the copycat ninja, his feelings had begun to develop long before Naruto had even given thought to such a thing, specifically during the elemental recomposition training he had helped Naruto with together with Tenzu. However, Naruto's reaction to his innocent little comment about liking the blonde-haired teen had discouraged him from making any moves. And Naruto, having been flirting subtly with Kakashi for months, who had finally gotten fed up with the wishy-washy reactions of the dog summoner, grabbed the silver-haired man by his jacket after a training session and told him in as blunt words as possible, "I'm fucking in love with you, Kakashi. Do something or don't, but stop tiptoeing around the subject, to man up and stop prevaricating." Which Kakashi responded to with some definite action, reversing the hold and shoving Naruto up against a nearby tree and kissing the blonde to near asphyxiation. Now, about a year into their relationship, the two spooned together in the tent. Although Naruto and Kakashi were about the same size, Naruto was just a little shorter than his older partner, a holdover from the malnutrition of his childhood. However, the blonde's frame was a bit bulkier, wider at the shoulder and across the chest, which allowed him to pull the long and lithe Kakashi to his chest with a degree of comfort that the opposite positioning would not have afforded. Their low-volume conversation had subsided several minutes prior, and the two war-weary ninja were now basking comfortably in each other's presence. Inhaling the aroma of dissipating ozone and wet earth under natural musk that made up the scent that Naruto had labeled Kakashi in his mind, the blonde nin laid small close-mouthed kisses at the nape of the older nin's neck. Slowly making his way up to the dip behind Kakashi's ear, then along his jaw-line, Naruto continued to explore. Smoothing his hand up along the hardened muscle of Kakashi's stomach and chest, he carefully stayed away from the silver-haired nin's nether regions, turning to hover above the body of his lover. There was a moment, though it felt like an infinite number of moments, when blue eyes met a single gray eye and love and passion played between the gazes. Naruto lowered his head slowly, giving Kakashi plenty of time to protest should he wish to, and placed a soft kiss over the mask that covered Kakashi's mouth. He then lifted up and, supporting himself on one arm, used his free hand to remove the Hittite that shielded Kakashi's Sharingan from the world, then to lower the soft blue cloth that covered his lover's features. It was not the first time he'd seen Kakashi's face. They'd been lovers for nearly a year already, after all. But every time he was astounded anew by how perfectly imperfect his lover seemed to be. The scar that ran vertically over his eyelid and down his cheek balanced the crooked smile that matched Kakashi's crooked hair. The high cheekbones the man inherited from his mother softened the strong jawline he retained from his father, and with the heterochromia iridis caused by the Sharingan it all came together in a sort of crafted asymmetry that Naruto felt no artist would ever be able to recreate in all its glory. Naruto had blushed, embarrassed at the practical poetry his mind crafted to describe Kakashi's visage. He smothered it, shoving the words to the back of his mind where Kurama would no doubt hear and tease him about it later. He lowered his head again, catching the Kapinin's lightly chapped lips in another more zealous kiss. Testing the waters, Naruto slipped his tongue along Kakashi's bottom lip, wetting the soft flesh. In response, lips parted and another tongue came out to dance, later being concealed in a cavern of locked lips to allow for a more private, passionate tango. Hands slipped under dark cloth and bodies were explored like adventurers explored well-known lands. Though some rivers and valleys had been previously visited, there were always new places to see, places that hadn't been found before, and had yet to be surveyed. Fabric rustled and clothes were quickly removed, so as not to allow the mood to fade. Hasty kisses were exchanged and hands began to wander lower. The North Forest was clear of potential hostiles and tree bark was hard and abrasive. Goddammit. Wait, what? Naruto awoke from his interrupted dream, sitting abruptly in his bedroll and glared first at the wall, cursing his stupid clumsy Kagebunshin and then at the tent in his pants. The blonde groaned softly, and buried his face in his hands. Stupid hormones, stupid time travel, stupid oblivious, alive, lovers who aren't actually lovers anymore. Gah! Naruto extricated himself from his bedroll slowly and quietly as to avoid waking his teammates. He made another Kagebunshin to replace the one who had klutzed out and woken him via memory transfer, then carefully made his way to the guest bath to shower, trying to avoid stimulating his slowly wilting hard-on. He showered and took himself downstairs to assist Tsunami with cooking breakfast. An hour later he returned to awaken his teammates so they could eat and prepare themselves to accompany Tazuna to the bridge. Upon their arrival at the bridge after several hours of sleep, Team 7 and Tazuna found workers huddled warily, but continuing to build while avoiding the hulking mass that was Zabuza and his sword. He sat on one of the concrete barriers that bordered the bridge with his the false Lenin sidekick, who stood near him on the ground looking frail and delicate next to his master. "Oh, hey Haku, missing brows," Naruto said, waving nonchalantly at the mask-wearing Nin and tipping his head toward Zabuza, acknowledging his presence. Zabuza snarled warningly but made no move to start a fight. Sakura sidled closer to the irate swordsman, easily disregarding his temper, which caused Kakashi to raise an eyebrow but made no move to stop her. "Don't feel put out by the strange nicknames, Kijin-san," Sakura stage whispered to the large nuke Nin. "Naruto only gives ridiculous nicknames to shinobi he respects. Whether he respects you as a person or for your strength, however, is a different question altogether. You should hear the names he calls the 3 Sannin or the Hokage." Kakashi bit back a snicker, remembering the blonde calling Sarutobi various names that all pointed to the fact that he was old, and Zabuza just raised one of his missing brows. Haku pushed his mask up and to the side. Controlling the amusement in his voice, he changed the subject. "How did you know it was me, Naruto-san?" You have a distinct scent, like cold steel and an oncoming frost. I knew it was you when we met in the forest a few days ago." Naruto smiled brightly at the ice user, who just blinked in surprise. Kakashi gave Naruto a look, both asking why this was the first time he had heard about the meeting and promising that they would be speaking later. Zabuza gave Haku a similar look before turning back to Kakashi. "You killed my employer, Hataki? I need the money he was supposed to pay me and I'm going to get it." About that, Kakashi started to make a long-winded excuse that was composed of pure, unadulterated bullshit. But Sasuke, who was carrying the money, just threw the scroll in which the payment was sealed to the shinobi swordsman, effectively cutting off the silver-haired man's excuses before he could really get going, which caused Kakashi to pout unprofessionally about stupid genin who ruined all his fun. On the other side of the Jounin, Naruto and Haku were discussing their meeting in the forest. "Why didn't you attack me if you knew I was Zabuza-sama's accomplice?" "You didn't attempt to kill me on sight either. I should be asking you the same question," Naruto retorted with a smile. "Touché. But really, I wanted to hear what you were going to say. It's not often that a shinobi gets to speak of philosophies with the ninja on the other side of the battlefield." "True, it really was a rare opportunity," the feminine boy replied, tilting his head to the side while contemplating Naruto's comment. Despite appearing completely disinterested in the interaction, nose buried in the pages of his book of adventure porn and all, Kakashi watched attentively as Naruto spoke with Zabuza's accomplice. He studied his student's body language, taking in the toned muscles of his arms as they showed beneath chain mesh. He saw the minute adjustments in Naruto's weight placement and distribution as the blonde gesticulated while he conversed, causing the black tank he wore to ride up and show off the taut, tanned flesh of Naruto's stomach. Realizing exactly where his gaze was beginning to rove, The copycat reattached his eyes to the Jinchuriki's face just in time to see Naruto laugh gaily at a remark the effeminate ice user made. The warm laughter echoed in Kakashi's mind as he reminded himself that it was inappropriate to eye up his preteen student. Behind the copy Nin, Sakura and Sasuke were exchanging looks and snickering silently to themselves. They both knew exactly what Kakashi had been looking at that caused the infinitesimal twitching of his eyebrow and widening and narrowing of his visible eye. Both were well versed at reading the minute movements that passed for facial expressions with Kakashi. "So why did you guys assassinate Gato anyway?" Haku asked curiously. "There were plenty of other ways to ensure your client's safety that didn't involve going after Gato personally." Naruto smiled. "Do you see that?" he asked, pointing at the scroll that was now clasped in Zabuza's hand. Haku nodded. "That's the money Gato was not going to pay you." That statement caught the attention of Zabuza, Haku, and Kakashi. "What do you mean by that, Gaki?" Zabuza demanded. "While we were going through all the documents and payroll stubs and deeds that the stupid shit stain, Gato," Naruto practically snarled the man's name, his voice full of disgust, "kept in his vault room, we came across a whole bunch of sealing scrolls which were the looted belongings of other Nukenin he'd hired before you guys." And the sword wielder pressed. "It turns out that he also kept a record of all the Nukenin he'd hired and how he managed to get away with not paying them for their services. He usually lets them get tired out against their opponents, and then gathers a group of hundreds of bandits, mercenaries and ronin to kill both the hired Nukenin and the opposing shinobi or samurai. Sometimes the hired nin get killed by the enemy, and make no mistake, you would have both died if you tried to fight us again. To him it's a win-win situation." The Kirigakyu no Kijin growled but didn't protest further, knowing that what the blonde said was correct. "I'm glad I broke his wrist when I had the chance," Haku growled under his breath. "I only wish I'd killed him instead." Naruto patted the long-haired teen on the back. "It's okay, we did it for you." Haku smiled at him. "I don't normally like killing, but that man really deserved worse than he got." Naruto smiled back. "I know. So what are you and Giant Kitchen Knife-san going to do now?" Haku's smile fell from his face and he glanced with indecision towards Zabuza, whose hand tightened around the Kubikiributsu in indignation before deciding to answer. "You brats seem to know too much already, but tell me, do you know why I attempted to instigate a coup d'état in the first place?" "I was under the impression that it was because of the Yondaime Mizuki's bloodline massacres," Sasuke said. "Good enough," Zabuza replied. "I staged a coup to stop the massacres and, well, for other reasons, and failed. Now I'm gathering money to fund a new rebellion. That's why I took this job from Gato, he was supposed to pay well." "Why are you trying to start a new bloodline rebellion when there already is one?" Naruto asked. "There is?" Both Haku and Zabuza nearly shouted. "You didn't know?" the blonde replied. "It's led by a woman named Terumi Mei." What the Konoha shinobi could see of Zabuza's face paled rapidly. "You mean the Futasuri Yugan no Terumi, that Terumi Mei?" the Nukenin hissed, eyes wide. The three Konoha genin looked at each other with confusion in their eyes, wondering what the big deal was, then looked back at Zabuza and nodded. The wielder of the Kubikiributsu stood from his position on the wall with a glare of determination in his eyes. "Change of plans, Haku. We're going to pick up that wandering Kagaya we found on the coast of Umi no Kuni and bring him with us along with this money as a peace offering. We're joining that woman's rebellion." Haku's eyes widened at the look of mild panic in Zabuza's own. "I'm not going to stage another rebellion and possibly get in the way of that woman," the swordsman muttered under his breath, so quietly that Naruto almost didn't hear it. Naruto didn't know what Zabuza's history with Mei was, but he decided not to get involved. "Don't forget to keep in touch," Naruto shouted at Haku as Zabuza led him away from the bridge. Haku waved back but was too far away already to make any real response. "Well, that went well," Kakashi commented rather unnecessarily as the two former Kirinin disappeared into the fog, returning his attention to his omnipresent adult literature. It had been several days since the completion of the Great Naruto Bridge and Team 7's subsequent departure from Nami no Kuni. Quickly bypassing the gate guards and filing their return to the village, the group of newly proclaimed heroes made their way to the Hokage Tower to report the success of their mission. After entering the Hokage's office, having been approved by his secretary, the group of 4 shinobi noticed another figure in the room beside the Hokage. The elder Uchiha was not expecting to be walked in on, and wasn't ready to hide quickly enough. Having arrived in the room just minutes before Team 7, his briefing hadn't even gotten started before the Genin team made their way into the room. Itachi's eyes widened imperceptibly. Expecting hatred and explosive anger from Sasuke, Itachi braced himself and erased all traces of emotion from his visage. Sasuke, however, noticing his brother's presence, hid a smirk at the minute changes in body language the older Uchiha displayed. Then, he allowed the carefully hidden playful side of his personality, the side which had decided to prank Kakashi during the first introductions, to shine. With a decided nonchalance he regarded Itachi with a casual glance. "Oh, hey Nissan, long time no see." The wide-eyed look of absolute bafflement on the elder Uchiha sibling's face was a sight that Sasuke would have liked to capture for eternity, which Naruto gleefully did for him with a camera the blonde had seemingly pulled from nowhere. Kakashi, who was ready to defend both his students and his Hokage from the teenage Nukenin, was just as flabbergasted by Sasuke's reaction as Itachi. The cycloptic Jounin wasn't called a genius for nothing, though, and quickly recognized that had the Hokage felt endangered by the eldest surviving Uchiha, he would have done something about it long before Kakashi could have even moved a muscle. His student's reaction to the situation, though, was really what tipped him off. It was time to get to the bottom of the mystery the three of them presented. Following this mission debriefing, he would be speaking to both Sarutobi-sama and his students. Unless the Hokage ordered him not to dig, he would find out what the hell was going on. Taking his signal from the Sandame's comfortable state, Kakashi relaxed and watched the scene with a careful objectivity. The Sandame, on the other hand, just smiled in mild amusement, enjoying the antics of his shinobi. In spite of everything, cough the trouble it causes cough, Konoha has always liked its eccentric ninja and their odd habits. YOSH. Let our flames of youth explode. Gai-sensei. Lee. Cue sweat drops. Itachi scowled imperceptibly and watched his younger brother and his teammates, unsure why Sasuke reacted the way he had. Aware of Itachi's shrewd gaze, Sasuke flashed his Manjikyu Sharingan at the older Uchiha and smirked, giving him the clue he needed. Understanding flashed through his gaze and he quirked a small but very real smile. Sasuke must also have these memories after that particular thought. The smile quickly dropped, and a thoughtful frown took its place. If he has the Manjikyu, that means that these memories really happened in some future, and someone has brought the timeline back to this point. His frown deepened slightly. Itachi watched his brother's team interact, and his gaze followed Sasuke as Naruto flung an arm around the dark-eyed boy's shoulder, and proceeded to give him a noogie with his free hand, all the while grinning like a madman. Sasuke returned the grin from under the blonde's grip and retaliated with a sudden squeeze at Naruto's unprotected side, causing the blue-eyed boy to give an undignified shriek in surprise and reflexively release the other boy from his pseudo-stranglehold. Friendly banter passed between the boys while Sakura stood to the side giggling and adding a jab here and there, some directed at Sasuke and some at Naruto. Itachi observed Kakashi watching all of this over the edge of his glorified smut with a fond twinkle in his uncovered eye. The long-haired teenager was glad that his Anbu senpai was living in the present again, and that one of Konoha's best ninja was there to watch over his beloved brother while he couldn't. Gauging Itachi's reaction through the cover of his antics, he decided it was time to bring this meeting to the real reason for their gathering. Naruto collected himself and looked first at the Sandame, then at Itachi. Blue eyes met slowly failing charcoal, and Itachi now knew exactly who caused him to receive these memories. Sakura and Sasuke followed Naruto's example and brought themselves to parade rest before the Hokage. Kakashi even straightened up out of his perpetual slouch and stowed his little orange book. Sarutobi took a moment and stood, disabling the one listening seal that Naruto and Sakura had left after their initial visit to his office. He had already cleared the ANBU from the room when Itachi had arrived, and Sakura took this as an indication that it was time to initialize a privacy jutsu. The Sandame reseated himself and spoke. Kakashi, whatever you hear in this room does not leave here. I will know if a single word of what is spoken in this room meets other ears, and I will be neither pleased nor lenient. Kakashi nodded and Sarutobi continued, any questions you have after our discussion will be answered to the best of our collective abilities. Kakashi nodded again. Naruto, the Hokage prompted. Kakashi's eye widened and he returned his attention to his enigmatic student. He felt his teacher's heavy gaze on him but ignored him. Itachi-san, you have questions, Naruto opened. Itachi's face didn't betray his surprise, but he hadn't expected the blonde to address his issues first. Rather, he'd expected to be treated to explanations first, then allowed to ask his questions. His mouth tightened into a thin line as he decided which question to ask. Why? Naruto smiled sardonically. That had to be the first question, didn't it? The blue-eyed ninja sat himself on the floor and gestured for everyone else to get situated. Well, you might as well get comfortable. We'll be here for a while. After everyone took a seat, his teammates with Naruto on the floor, Kakashi on the couch against the wall, and Itachi on the chair that was left for face-to-face meetings with the Hokage, the blonde spoke again. That's both the hardest and the easiest question to answer, he said, looking at his hands while his mind conjured the image of the dexterous appendages covered in blood. The easiest answer is that there was no choice, he continued slowly, his mind no longer really in the room. The hardest answer, we could have kept fighting, but there was nothing left to fight for. There was no choice to make between present and past because there was nothing in the present for us to regret leaving unfinished or unprotected. No Konoha, no comrades, no friends, no bijou, nothing. That is why. The silence in the room was staggering. Suffocating. The confusion that radiated off of Team 7's squad leader was palpable but did nothing to decrease the tension in the room. I see, was Itachi's careful response. He knew now that this meeting would be filled with hard answers, unwanted answers. It was time. Around me by hitting me with a Gogia Fuin, cutting me off from Mama-san and screwing my chakra control into the next week. The abrupt disappearance of Yuki from my system caused me to pass out, which allowed that purple-ass Byaru to mark Sasuke with his cursed hiki of a Juinjutsu. Fucking 10 no Juin. Naruto grumbled. That thing is a bitch to get off. Naruto looked at Itachi. Thank you for sealing Sasuke's in your final battle of insensitive martyrdom. His thanks were sincere in his voice, but the bright smile on his face was so bogus it would make Sai flinch. Itachi's right eye twitched and Sasuke just let his forehead fall into his palm. Sasuke, who was both grateful for and annoyed at Naruto's jab at his brother's master plan, decided to get his shit out in the open so they could move on. He held his hands up in a stop motion. Okay. Pause. Sasuke looked his brother in the eyes, then stood and walked over to where Itachi was sitting. The younger Uchiha closed his eyes and took a deep breath. His eyes opened, Sharingan spinning, and in a flicker of movement his fist was buried in Itachi's stomach. The long-haired teenager hacked a racking cough, spittle flecked with blood flew over Sasuke's shoulder, and a small trail of blood flowed from Itachi's lips. That was for using me as the instrument for your suicide and manipulating me into committing fratricide, Sasuke growled, and a sudden small burst of lightning chakra flashed through the fist that was still buried in the elder Uchiha's abdomen, setting Itachi's pain receptors flaring. That was for not allowing me to make my own fucking judgments about our clan, as well as leaving everything as an ambiguous mess that you still refused to clear up before you were unresurrected. The younger Uchiha finally removed his fist from this brother's stomach and wrapped Itachi in a tight hug. And this, he said, is for doing everything you did for me, even if you had to go about it in the most fucked up way possible. Kakashi was looking on the scene equally confused as he was moved. Sakura was leaning into Naruto, who had an arm wrapped around her shoulders, tearing up and smiling at the violent but touching scene. Naruto just watched with a small smile on his face, happy for his best friend. Sarutobi, however, watched impassively, well aware of his part of the tragedy that befell the two brothers. We will need to speak about this, little brother, Itachi murmured. Sasuke released his hold and stood straight. With a light smirk on his face, he poked two fingers at his older brother's forehead, from where his Hittite had fallen during the violence. Next time, foolish older brother. Itachi blinked twice in astonishment. He then cracked a small true smile at his own words being turned back on him by his little brother. Sasuke made his way back to his seat on the floor by Naruto and gave a pointed look to his friend. Play. You really expect me to keep explaining about the Chunin exams after that beautifully violent and touching scene? Naruto asked his pseudo-brother in disbelief. Scarcely detectable eye roll. Oh, really? But that's absurd, team. Brow furrows minutely. Naruto threw his hand up in frustration. You know what? Screw this. Sakura. Your turn to keep telling the story. You were the only one awake for this part anyway. Sakura sighed, about to take up the story, but was interrupted by the Sandaime. Wait, before that, Naruto, you can remove the 10 no Juin? Sarutobi asked. Yeah? Naruto said, a bit confused. Hadn't he just said so? Would you be willing to remove the one on Mitarashi Enko? Sure. Before the Chunin exams? Why not? I'll let you know when I want you. What do you need and how long will it take? Naruto smirked at the Hokage. 2.5 hours, 6 ounces of her blood, Sakura, and a place where I can paint on the floor. Alright, thank you, Naruto. Please continue, Sakura-kun. Sakura began to speak, recounting their time in the forest post-Orochimaru and up through the invasion staged by Suna and Oto. So after Sandaime-sama sacrificed himself to seal Orochimaru's jutsu, the bastard fled with all his little minions, leaving a mess for the rest of us to clean up. Naruto, who was finally over his little fit of pique, retook his role as primary storyteller. It was maybe a week after the whole invasion thing when Ero-sennin found me and decided to bring me with him to find Tsunade-bachan to be the Godame. It was around then when you and Kisame came to find me for the first time, Itachi-san. Itachi scowled slightly. I apologize for that, Naruto-kun. Nah, don't worry about it, Tobeo, Naruto replied, waving his hand as if to dismiss the apology. If you had really wanted to capture me, I'm sure you could have. You're an S-ranked ninja after all, and I was just an extremely lucky, if underprepared and rather untrained genin that happened to have access to small amounts of Bijuu chakra. Itachi continued to scowl, but nodded. Naruto let a small smile grow. What happened is really something like the curse of all S-ranked ninja. I like to call it S-rank hubris. Basically, the blonde explained, once a ninja reaches the higher echelons of S-rank, Sakura elbowed Naruto in the side with a bit more force than necessary. Or she, he amended, has gotten so strong that almost every foe they have come across is so far below their level that they begin to underestimate their opponents based on arbitrary things, like rank or size, or even appearance. Even though they should know better, the general ease with which they decimate their adversaries belies the danger that doing that sort of thing causes. When I was young, my opponents, including many of the Akatsuki, tended to underestimate me because of my loud attitude and appearance. The orange, the shouting, even my height, although the last one wasn't intentional. Naruto digressed. Sakura interrupted Naruto's monologue. You mean being loud and annoying and orange was on purpose? The rosette almost shrieked. Well, it was after the wave mission when I realized how badly Zabuza and Haku both underestimated me because of it. I mean, I was always shouting about how they shouldn't underestimate me, and it just caused them to do so even more. So afterward I decided it was a good tactic to continue. Kakashi, who had been watching from the couch the entire time, was more confused than he had been in a very long time. Why were his students discussing a Chunin exam he knew he hadn't entered them for, yet, especially one during which the Sandame supposedly died, seeing as the Sandame was sitting right in front of him? Why was Sasuke berating Itachi for engineering his own demise by the younger boy's hand, when Itachi was there to berate? He needed some clarification if he was going to understand any of this at all. Even during Naruto's little explanation of S-rank hubris, there were inexplicable word choices that the copy-nin didn't understand, speaking of being young as if he wasn't a 12-year-old genin. Hatake Kakashi decided it was time to get some answers. There was a lull in the storytelling after Naruto's little divulgence and Sakura's flabbergasted shouting. Kakashi decided to take advantage. Ma, can someone please explain to me, before we go any further, why we are discussing events that haven't happened? And why my genin seem to be in the middle of this little conspiracy? As much as I'd really like to follow where this discussion is going, I'm completely out of my depth here. All heads turned in Kakashi's direction as many of the room's occupants had apparently forgotten the cycloptic ninja's presence. Naruto sighed. He knew that this was coming. Deciding to get this whole thing over with, he would just tell the truth. Sakura and I are from the future database. Kakashi's visible eye widened then narrowed as he took in this information. Sasuke and Itachi have their memories from our future due to a glitch in the jutsu we used to rewind the timeline. The Sandame has his memories because Sakura and I decided we needed his help to fix things. You're here because you're an important player, and we need your help. If you can convince me and Sakura that you really want the memories from our next 8 years back, I can unlock them for you. Kakashi uncovered his Sharingan and motioned for Naruto to continue speaking, knowing that his Sharingan would allow him to divine the truth of the situation from Naruto's words. His blue-eyed genin continued to talk, staring straight in his eyes the entire time, but Kakashi-sensei, please don't decide arbitrarily that you want these memories. You will not only gain the memories, but also the emotional trauma that comes with them, and it will be concentrated due to the fact that you won't have recovery time between each traumatic event. Naruto looked down and cleared his throat. One more thing. If you decide to regain your memories, just because you have memories of certain things, do not, and I repeat do not, feel obligated to act on them. He looked back up and speared Kakashi with a determined stare, and you must promise to only take action once you've discussed the action you wish to take with at least me, if not all of us. This was one of the hardest things Naruto had ever had to say, well aware that the two things Kakashi may choose to act on were A, their relationship, and B, Obito. He would tell Kakashi of what transpired with Obito, but hearing it and feeling all the emotion and trauma of the event were two completely different things. There was no hint of a lie in Naruto's words, nor was there any in his facial expressions. He knew his student was telling the truth, but it still sounded so implausible. Is there something you can show me? All of this seems so unbelievable. Naruto showed him a wry smile, and cut his gaze to Sakura, who nodded. With a murmur of infusion, Kai and a small burst of chakra, which he saw with his Sharingan was the release of chakra from two concealed seals. Sitting before him were his two students. Both were obviously not teenagers anymore. How old? 20 and 21. The wry smile on Naruto's face hadn't fallen. In fact, it fit a bit better on his older features. His voice had also deepened. It was rough and soft all at the same time, like rubbing velour in the wrong direction, and it played havoc with Kakashi's currently barely suppressed hormones. Nevertheless, it wasn't time for thoughts such as those, so Kakashi pushed them to the back of his mind and continued his questioning. And Sasuke? Physically 12, mentally 19. Sasuke. Kakashi swallowed, unable to say the word, before you and Sakura? Naruto nodded sadly. Itachi? Again, physically 18, mentally 22 or so. He died pretty early, so his mental age isn't that far removed from his actual age, you can do the math. And if I regained my memories? The silver-haired man asked, not really sure he wanted to know. You wouldn't age physically and you'd gain about 6 years mentally. Kakashi blew out a harsh breath and sank back into the sofa. Only 6 more years, huh? That's something we're trying to change, Sensei. It would be ideal if we could all live long, productive lives, rather than lose them to a psychotic megalomaniac with a savior complex. Naruto told his silver-haired sensei, dryly. Uchiha Madara, Naruto replied, correctly interpreting his once lover's not yet a question. But he is. How? A proxy. Who? Naruto grimaced, knowing Kakashi would not like the answer. Uchiha Obito. Sitting forward, Kakashi's eyes narrowed and he focused his Sharingan on Naruto. He's dead. He's not. Truth. How is he alive? Long story short, the boulder he was under caused a collapse into the tunnels of Uchiha Madara's underground base, where the bastard basically rebuilt Obito's right side using a Mokuton base cell structure hijacked from the corpse of Senju Hashirama and modified. There's a whole lot more to the story, but that's for later. Again, truth. Is he salvageable? Kakashi didn't like using that word. It made it sound like Obito was a broken blade in need of a good reforging. Unfortunately, it was the right word for this particular situation. Naruto could see the pain in Kakashi's countenance as the copy Nin forced the words out of his mouth. Even knowing how improbable and impractical such a solution would be, he still answered, I believe so, but only if we get to him before he starts the 4th Hidden Shinobi World War. After then he'll be completely over the edge. Truth. What has he done? He hasn't been sitting idle all these years, I wouldn't believe it. He was the one who released Kurama, the Kyuubi, Naruto elaborated, grimace still playing on his features, from my mother's seal on the night of my birth, and caused his rampage through the village. Truth. He was also the Sandai Mizukage. Truth. And he was the one who through implanted genjutsu suggestions started the bloodline civil war in Kirigakure. Truth. He caused Minato-sensei and Kushinane's death? Kakashi didn't want to believe it. Naruto answered quietly. Yes, truth. Kakashi leaned back into the cushions on the couch, let his head fall back and threw his arm over his eyes, Sharingan tearing, as he thought of what its first owner had perpetrated. He could feel Naruto's deep blue eyes on him, and could practically smell the worry and sadness wafting off his sensei's son. He lifted his arm and tried to smile disarmingly, but knew he failed. Naruto's small sad smile let him know that his blonde student understood. Take your time to think about it, sensei. I'll continue with the event summary. Naruto continued to elucidate on his trip to find Tsunade, and his fight with Sasuke on the roof, then allowed Sasuke to take over for his side of his defection, when Naruto picked up to talk about the failed mission to stop Sasuke, which Sakura, Sasuke and Naruto all followed in turns by talking about their training with their respective Sannin sensei. While the blonde spoke of his training trip, which was mostly filled with little bits of training interspersed with Jiraiya going off to peep on ladies at hot springs or lakes and leaving Naruto with tasks that were finished well before the Sannin returned, Kakashi allowed Naruto's warm, rough tenor to wash over him as he thought about his situation. He knew Naruto was telling the truth. His Sharingan had confirmed it. However, he knew that he'd never understand the full impact of what had happened, know what could potentially happen without the memories that he apparently had but couldn't access. He weighed the pros and cons of regaining his memories. Pros: he'd fully understand the scope of the situation, he'd learn the story behind Obito's actions, and he'd understand the dynamics of his students and what had transpired from personal experience. Cons: well, all the pros and then some. But he also knew that it was better to learn from mistakes than repeat them. With his memories he could fully understand where he went wrong. And as painful as it may turn out to be, it would be better in the long run if he knew, he supposed. He'd also know if anything came of the odd feelings he'd been having around his blonde student, and if they had, well, he'd see when he got there. Now all he had to do was convince Naruto and Sakura that it was what he really wanted. Kakashi turned his attention back to the meeting, and listened closely as Sakura described their mission to rescue Gaara from Akatsuki, while he subtly eyed his blonde student's 20-year-old form. It was 4 hours, many questions and tangents later, and Naruto was summarizing the last few weeks before he and Sakura had reversed time, was just the two of us left to bail. Don't you dare forget my presence or contribution, Nijen, came the rumbling, sleep-garbled interruption of Kurama in Naruto's mind. There's no way I could forget you, Kurama, just still your tales for a minute. Kurama was the last bijou, and only his nearly complete presence in me was keeping the Jubi from rampaging in full once again to bail. It was Kurama and us, the corpses of all our friends, enemies turned allies, enemies and just about everyone but that damned overpowered zombie, Madara and his pet Shinju or Jubiki or whatever. There was no chance of victory for us, and it really was the only choice. Go back or die to bail, Naruto said. With Sakura's help and Kurama's input I managed to devise a seal that with the power of Shursue's Manjikyu and Rama-san's chakra would actually reverse the flow of the space-time continuum, bringing Sakura and I back to a specified point in the timeline. Which was about 6 months and a few weeks ago. Bail. By the end, Naruto was so emotionally exhausted his verbal tic was showing itself every other sentence, and he wasn't even trying to suppress it anymore. What we've changed so far is really only the mission in Nami no Kuni, stated Sakura, letting Naruto decompress from the emotional upheaval of recounting the last 3 months of the war. In our original mission, we really were surprised by the sudden change in rank and we certainly weren't ready for real ninja combat. I was a fangirl, Sasuke had a stick up his ass the size of a tree trunk and Naruto's education had been so sabotaged and neglected that his only real skills were Kage Bunshin, his stamina and his stealth, which he never really chose to use anyway. Kakashi-sensei actually taught us tree walking while we were in Nami no Kuni, during the days he and Zabuza were recovering from their first altercation. Naruto trained till exhaustion on the night before we were supposed to fight Zabuza for a second time, and was left at the client's house to sleep a little more. When he woke, he dispatched a couple of Ronin Gato had sent to take Tsunami hostage and made his way to the bridge where Sasuke was fighting Hakukuin and Kakashi-sensei was engaged with Zabuza, while I guarded Tizuna-san. Sasuke was put in a death-like state by Hakukuin and Naruto used Kyuubi's chakra for the first time to take out Haku. Naruto didn't want to kill Hakukuin after recognizing him from their meeting in the forest a few days earlier. But Hakukuin ended up intercepting Kakashi-sensei's Raikiri, allowing Zabuza to live. Then Gato showed up with, like 200 bandits, and said that he hadn't planned on paying Zabuza anyhow. Zabuza went bats hit on the bastard and the bandits, even though Sensei had taken out his arms in preparation for Raikiri, and ended up killing Gato and about half the bandits before succumbing to his wounds. His last wish was to see Haku's face again. After that a mob of villagers showed up to stop the rest of the bandits from pillaging and looting the town, and Naruto and Kakashi faked them out with clones. We stayed until the bridge was finished and buried Zabuza and Haku there, before coming back. The Sandame nodded, having heard from Naruto before they took the mission a second time and called Kakashi's attention. Report, Kakashi-kun. Kakashi recounted the mission as he'd experienced it, emphasizing the differences from the story Sakura had spoken beforehand. He cited the assassination and information-gathering operation they had performed, preempting Gato's treachery, and their interaction with Zabuza and Haku at the bridge. I expect a written report in 3 days, Kakashi-kun. Good job, Team 7. Itachi-kun, what would you like to do about your missing Nin status? Sasuke-kun, input? Said the Sandame. I have a couple loose ends to tie up with Akatsuki before I can return. They haven't told us anything about the plans other than that we will be collecting Jinchuriki yet, so I'm sure it's possible for me to defect without too much trouble. And I haven't yet recruited Deidara, though Orochimaru has already left. If Sasuke is okay with letting the truth of the treachery of the Uchiha clan be revealed, then I will be able to return. Itachi informed them. Do it. I want my brother back, Sasuke said frostily. Itachi, send me a message with one of your crows when you're ready to return. Team 7 dismissed. As the 4 ninja of Squad 7 filed into the hall outside the Hokage's office, Kakashi gathered his team. I want a squad meeting. Kakashi spoke. Naruto, back in his seal-based henge, responded quietly, my apartment, 1900 hours. That gives us all time to shower and change. I'll have a meal ready. Excellent. Team 7 dismissed. Was all the silver-haired Jounin said before disappearing in a shunshin. Naruto walked casually through the door connecting his bedroom and en-suite to the living dining kitchen area of his small 1 LDK apartment. His influence was inactive, allowing him to stand at his full height of 5 feet 10 inches. He wore a pair of black lounge pants and an orange-fitted t-shirt. A white towel was hanging around his neck, moist from his attempts to dry his hair and catching the few drips that continued to fall periodically from the still damp locks. It was just as he reached his battered coffee table, where he had 3 Kage Bunshin setting out dinner and tableware for 4, when the first set of knocks resounded from his door. Surprisingly, it wasn't Sakura or Sasuke who was the first to arrive, but the perpetually tardy Kakashi, standing in his doorway. Moving out of the way, Naruto graciously bid the silver-haired Jounin entry, quietly directing him the 6 or so steps between the door and leaving space to sit either on one of the zabuton, surrounding his square coffee table, or the couch. Kakashi accepted Naruto's hosting with grace and kneeled elegantly on one of the zabuton, betraying the strength in his battle-trained legs. He studied the subdued atmosphere surrounding his normally upbeat student, and came to the correct conclusion that what had been recounted by his squad in the Hokage's sealed office had drained the typically energetic blonde. With the slight tilted narrowing of his uncovered eye, a mockery of his usual eye smile, a tacit, comfortable silence reigned between the two shinobi, only broken by the occasional clattering of dishes and cooking utensils from Naruto's clones in the nearby kitchen area. Kakashi had his omnipresent erotica out, and Naruto just sat silently, reveling in the presence of one of his most precious people. Several minutes later, Sakura and Sasuke both entered the apartment, not even bothering to knock. The two were used to Naruto's open-door policy regarding their company in his apartment, and were keyed into the security seals via chakra signature. Upon the closure of the door, Sakura let her henge subside, glad to once again see the world from her rightful perspective. Allowing the last of Naruto's Kage Bunshin to relieve her of the dango she'd brought to share, both she and Sasuke took seats on the remaining sides of the coffee table.